Then let's get this meeting to, you're on? Yep. Okay. Call this meeting of the Rockport Select Board to order for Monday, May 22nd. First item, please turn off or mute your cell phone. I'm going to do that right now, too, because I just remembered. Come on. Turn the sound off. Before we actually get into the meeting, I think it'd be appropriate to acknowledge the loss of a longtime Rockport resident who served the town and area for many years on various boards and commissions. Doug Linder, he came into the world on September 16th in San Francisco, 1931, and he left us May 7th this year. He's been involved in any number of our boards over the years and various county-wide activities. So I thought if maybe we could just have a moment of reflection on what his life has meant to us and how he has touched so many in many different ways. Okay. Thank you. I can't. Tom Farland?
Tom Ford.
Ford? Oh, and that's actually right. I thought I mentioned it last month, but apparently I didn't. I wasn't
at that meeting.
Tom Ford, also our longtime planner here in the town, and has been active on several other boards and committees around the area, particularly Midco Solid Waste, where he's been the chair for a while, the chair of that board, and he's also very unexpectedly left us, quite as a shock to everyone. He's not that old. So it brings to light how fragile our earthly existence may be. So if we could also have a moment for Tom. Thank you. Our first item is having a public hearing. It's regarding the non-binding marijuana article. What will appear actually it already appears on the ballot, is a non-binding advisory question. And I'll read it. Do you support allowing retail marijuana establishments and retail marijuana social clubs to operate in the town of Rockport, and the development of amendments to the land use ordinance to regulate the location and operation of those uses? The normal way we operate with the public hearing is I will ask if anyone wishes to speak in favor. After all those who wish to speak in favor of it wish to speak opposed to it. And after that, all wishing to speak neither for nor against. I will ask if you wish to speak, please come up to the podium. Anytime you wish to speak, we need you to come to the podium because that's the way the people at home can hear. So with that, I'm opening the public hearing. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this warrant article? Does anyone wish to speak opposed to this warrant article? Does anyone wish to speak neither for nor against? With that, thank you. I'll close this part of the public hearing, or this public hearing. We need to go on to our minutes, meetings, and announcements. We have finally started to catch up on some of the minutes that have been long in coming. The first one we have is the minutes from March 13th, 2017. I'll entertain a motion to accept as presented.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Do we have any additional changes that we need to make to these?
The only problem I see, Mr. Chairman, with these is that Mr. Parker and Mr. Casas were absent from that meeting.
Yes.
And so I don't know that we can approve them.
Well, at some point, I mean,
Yeah, well, otherwise we will never be able to.
yeah, you'll never be able
because
to
Mr.
enter
Reardon
them
is
in the
not
official
here.
record, so.
Frankly, I do not know what Robert's Rules of Order says on
Google
this,
search
but
it.
I'm going to have to say that the two of us are the only ones who were here for that meeting, and it's never gonna get better.
If you vote 2-0 in a two-person vote, can it pass?
According
Well-
to the bylaws, no.
It'd be 2-0-2.
Bylaws and charter,
Be 2-0.
it would be 2-0,
2-0-2,
abstentions.
2 abstentions, yeah.
But the
but it
charter
requires
three
three
votes.
positive votes.
So,
I'm gonna
not wanting
say
to get
that,
into the weeds too much, but the charter does that for things of action, and we're just entering into public record. We're agreeing that that was the public record.
and I was gonna, point out sort of similar to that,
Yeah.
that given the circumstances, I believe we can waive the normal process so that we may approve these.
Headlines tomorrow.
Headlines tomorrow, yep. Select board
So
violates
waived.
its oath and all that, and takes a
Yeah.
2-0-2 vote, assuming that we're gonna have a
Presupposing.
2-0-2 vote, yes. Okay,
This is really controversial.
Ken, do you have any other changes that you,
No, I have no changes.
all right. Then I'm gonna call for the vote. All in favor? All opposed? And any abstentions? We have 2, so I'm not gonna call the roll because it's rather obvious who's who here. The next item is the minutes from the special select board meeting of April 3rd.
Move to accept these meetings, the minutes of April 3rd as presented.
So moved.
He moved it.
I moved it. Someone moved it.
He moved it.
Second.
Second.
Thank you.
It's gonna be a long night.
You've been over in Augusta far too long.
Second.
Do we have any changes? Hearing none, then I'll call for the vote. All in favor? That has been accepted. We now have the April 10th meeting of the select board before us. Do I have a motion to accept or approve?
I'm not going to say anything.
Move
now.
to accept as presented, the minutes of April 10th.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Do we have any changes to these? Errors, omissions? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? We now have the special meeting that we held on April 11th before us.
Move to accept the meeting minutes of Tuesday, April 11th as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. These are very short. Any objections?
all.
Changes? No? All in favor? That's done. Let's go on to Thursday, April 13th. Another special meeting,
Move to accept the meetings of Thursday, April 13th as presented.
the minutes of April 13th. You said meetings of April 13th, I believe.
I said minutes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Linda heard.
Moved and seconded. Any changes, errors, or omissions to these? All in favor? That is accepted. The minutes from Tuesday, April 18th. These were our final budget votes. Also had the public hearing ahead of time.
Move to accept the meeting minutes of April 18th as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any changes, errors, or corrections? All in favor? Very good. The next one is a special meeting that we had on Monday, April 24th.
Move to accept the meeting minutes of Monday, April 24th as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Do we have any changes, errors, or omissions to these? I call for the vote. All in favor? That has been accepted.
Printing these out.
Monday, May 8th, we also have before us. Do I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I will note that you, Ken, were missing or absent from this, so I expect you will abstain. Any errors, changes, or omissions? No? All in favor? Opposed? Abstain? 301. And
Area code.
I can cut those puppet strings if you want.
01. All right. And then we have the executive session minutes that followed the wastewater budget and visioning workshop from Monday, May 15th. May 15th.
Move to accept the minutes of the meeting of Monday, May 15th.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any errors, omissions, changes? No? All in favor? And that takes us through all the minutes. Excuse me. Announcements. The next regular select board meeting for Rockport here will be Monday, June 26th, 7 PM. This will be after the new board is seated. And then the meeting after that would be Monday, July 10th, both 7 PM here in the Opera House Meeting Room. I would say that at the organizational meeting that the select board will hold immediately following the town meeting upstairs, they can change all of the meeting dates. And if it is a totally new board, that they may do that. Not saying that it will happen, but it might. Town meeting, election day, this is for balloting, is Tuesday, June 13th. The polls open at 8 AM and close at 8 PM. They will be at the Rockport Town Office in the Richardson Room. Please enter through the front door and follow the signs. The town meeting will be upstairs on Wednesday, June 14th, 7 PM. This will be streamed live as usual, and the select board organizational meeting will be immediately after that on the stage. There are no scheduled select board workshops coming up. Announcements of other committee meetings are all up on the town website. Go to the town website and scroll down, and there is the governmental calendar, and you can find all of the meetings that are scheduled. We have many committee openings, and those are also listed on the town website and in the agenda for this evening. Agenda changes. Do we have any agenda changes for this evening?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to move item G of new business up until before the unfinished business. That is for the police chief's situation, so that he can leave earlier.
All right.
Powerful guy there.
He doesn't even have his gun on. Oh, you're.
He's always got a gun
Look,
on him.
guys, let's not tease him. You know, I know he's of good humor, and he is smiling. Does anyone object to moving item G up? Oh, okay. Any other changes that we wish for tonight?
The only other possibility would be wastewater, because Megan would have to stay.
Well, she's going to stay for the audit anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
guys
Whereas,
slip
I
in.
know that, but I'm looking in terms of where
The audit's early in the agenda,
Yes.
isn't it?
You could put it after that.
Yeah, put waste.
Should we do that? I think we should. Is there anything else Megan needs to be here for? Because otherwise, that could be late.
Yeah.
So then I would suggest also that we move the entire wastewater section up until after the presentation of the
Okay.
audit, wherever that audit is.
Item D.
So after item D would be wastewater then.
All right. Do we have any objection to either of these? Then we will move forward. This is the town manager report, and I was expecting a brief.
I can
Oh,
do a
I'm
br-
sorry,
I'll
I'm
do a
sorry,
brief.
I'm sorry.
I'll do brief.
Wait, no, Rick, hold on, I'm sorry. Ken just pointed out, I'd completely skipped over public comment.
Oh,
We were so anxious to hear your report.
I'm all done.
Public comment. Public comment should be directed at issues not under discussion on this evening's agenda. Comment from the public will be welcome prior to each agenda item. Further comment will be granted only by permission from the board. All public comment should be brief and to the point. And we have someone wishing to make public comment this evening.
Thank you for recognizing that. Before I do that, I do have one question. I was under the impression that there were 2 vacancies going to be voted for on the library committee. One is to fill a 1-year position that Stephanie Lash left last year, and the other is to fill a 3-year position, because I didn't think Paul Charbonneau was running again. That is
You are correct on this. This is, what I
For-
mentioned here is only the
1 year.
1 year that, because
I wasn't.
it's
I
just
wasn't
been on
clear
here
that.
all, right along. There
Technically,
isn't
that's the only
technically-
spot that's open at the moment.
Right.
Because Paul is still serving. So
Gotcha.
This is not the
Okay.
committee vacancies,
Okay.
it's not the, what's gonna be voted on.
Gets a little confusing.
Yeah.
My name is Pat Messler, and I'm here tonight to give a little infomercial about the Friends of Rockport Library annual book sale, which is coming up in July, from July 13th to the 16th. And just to remind people that that is our major fundraiser for the year. We have been in the last, I don't know, 3-4 years, been able to raise through the book sale something like $14,000 to $15,000 over that weekend. And then in addition, we timed the annual membership of the Friends with the book sale and earn another $2,000-3,000. So in the last few years, we've been able to make a gift to the town through the library of about $18,000 to $20,000, which I think is quite amazing. It's certainly a testimony to the generosity of all the people who donate their books. And we have record albums and puzzles and DVDs and all sorts of things that are on sale during that week. We also want to make sure to thank our public works crew, without whom we couldn't do this amazing feat, and also other volunteers, and I guess I'm giving a little plug for needing volunteers this year. It takes about anywhere from 50 to 75 people to help us to set this up and run it and then clean it all up within a 6-day period. So it's a pretty amazing thing. We do have people who work all year long processing the donated books, sorting them, pricing them, boxing them up. And we have been very fortunate through the generosity of Rockport businesses to have a place to do that kind of work, because it takes a space, well, not quite as big as this room, but maybe 2/3 of the space of this room to go through that. We're talking, like 25,000 books that come in through the course of a year. And for 3 years, we had the generosity of Rockport Steel, Bill and Jill Glover, who gave us a building that we could use. And now we have, through the generosity of Greg Haney, a space in his business on, I guess it's just off Route 90, which we will use starting in August. So anyone who's interested in helping out, just sign up. We have a volunteer book at the library. Thank you.
Thank you. Is any, and donate your books, because that's a great way to recycle. You don't have to throw them out, you can pass them along and reuse.
Just have to remember which ones you donated so you don't buy them back.
Hello, hi. Terry Smith. I'm the house manager and rental agent at Rockport Opera House, this beautiful building. And I came to give a plug as well for an event we have coming up. On Saturday, August the 12th is a day that we've chosen to celebrate this building. It's this year, 2017, is its 125th year in service, or since the completion of the building. And so as a way to celebrate, we're putting on a party here on that day. We'll have some music, there'll be live music, space for dancing, we'll have food, and Earl Shuttleworth, our main state historian, will be coming through to give a lecture as well. And he'll be talking about the culture in this area at the turn of the 20th century, and also how the Opera House is related to entertainment and just a civil dynamic, or civic dynamic, excuse me, during that time. So he's going to have some really interesting stories to tell. This is a informal invitation to everybody to come join us on August 12th. It's going to be a great time. But also, too, we're actually in the works of planning this and getting it put together. So if there's anybody who's interested in volunteering on our group, we are also looking for volunteers. And this could be something, if you have time to do leading up to the event, we can use help passing out flyers, reaching out to sponsors for donations to help put on this event. And also, too, the day of the event, we'll need help here at the building and with parking. So if anyone's interested in either sponsoring a specific piece of this event or in volunteering, please give me a call. You can reach me by Opera House at town.rockport.maine.us or .me.us. Or you can give me a call at 207-542-3555. And like us on Facebook and go to rockportoperahouse.com. And those are the best ways to reach us. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Anyone else wish to make public comment? Then we will move on to the town manager's report.
Okay, I'm gonna keep it brief. High Sidewalk is nearly complete. The piece that's gonna hold us up now is gonna be the railing, which has to be custom fabricated. So I believe they've been in, taken measurements and done all that work, but the railing has to be custom fabricated before they can put it in place. Summer Street, we're still working on a plan of how that's gonna go. I don't know that that plan has been completed yet. The sewer on Route 1, the sewer extension on Route 1 is completed. As you can see, they've cleaned up most of the material, and the state has given us the okay on the intersection work that we did. So that's all done. The new stoplights were supposed to have gone in a week ago. I don't know what happened, and the sewer extension on Spear Street that you guys looked at the last time, which you approved, is basically on hold. I thought it was solved until about 20 minutes before I left, and it seems like, I don't know what's gonna happen, so it's still a work in progress, of which direction the property owner is gonna wanna go. There was some talk about not doing the sewer extension and actually having him putting a leach field in, being able to get that done cheaper. Whether that will work out, I think we're still hopeful that will work out, but I don't know, just from the phone call I got late today. And lastly, David Berry stopped into my office to remind me and ask if we could get any select board members to march in the Memorial Day parade, which he always he tries really hard to get you guys to go. And I know you're marching with
I'll be with the Legion.
the Legion. You're at the.
I'm flipping burgers out at the Masonic Center.
I unfortunately will be out of town.
You'll be out of town.
There you go, Jeff. Holding the mantle.
Can we switch positions, because I'm out of town too? If I get back in time, I will,
How's work up on Mount Pleasant Street going? Have we-
I don't think we've done anything recently. We haven't done any work there.
Graded Mount Pleasant,
Just-
the prepping and nothing's gone out to bid yet.
Oh, okay.
What about that Bill brought up the other day when they brought the docks in? Maybe they hurt the footbridge down by the harbor.
It was just the railing on it, and that was replaced the next morning. They did a
Good.
beautiful job of it.
Beautiful. 10 points.
Yep.
And that's it.
Any other questions? Nope. Very well. Then let's move on to item G, actually, under new business. And this is the approval of the 3-year interlocal joint agreement with the town of Camden for the police chief services.
Yes, and in your package, you'll find that agreement. It's basically, it's an extension, and it memorializes some of the things. It memorializes the pieces of the things that we had talked about at previous meetings with reimbursing the town of Camden for things like the use of the chief's car, his training, his uniforms. I believe we have money, we have an agreement for that in there. So this agreement, the current agreement expires on the 1st of July. So you basically, we had the joint meeting, basically you agreed to enter into the 3-year agreement then. So this is just memorializes that.
Okay.
My only question is in the preamble, on the second and third whereases. It says, whereas Randy Gagnon is currently employed as a police chief of the town of Camden, it seems to me we ought to say that he is also for Rockport now, or should that not be included there?
No, he's still an employee of the town.
I understand that, okay. And then, but then the next whereas talks about you know, the retirement of the current police chief effective July 1st, 2016. Seems to me that shouldn't be there because that was in last year when we first did it, but doesn't necessarily need to
Right.
be there. I think we could perhaps strike that and say the town of Rockport has a continuing need for police chief services or something like
Yep.
that.
Either has a continuing or had an immediate, if you want to keep the second whereas, the third should have a had it.
So can you approve it with those changes, and you'll have to come in and, it's got my signature on it, right? Yeah. it
I
does.
think so, yours and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Roberta's.
Yep, okay, so then we'll make those you'll approve it with those changes?
Yeah, those are the only, the rest of it seemed fine, that seemed what we talked about, but it seemed like the preamble kind of got maybe just copied over.
Because we didn't really, yeah, we just pulled it over.
Yeah.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
On number 3, scope of services, cost, we, Rockport shall pay, reimburse Camden 40.71% of all total costs. FYI, that's a population-based, or, okay?
Yep.
Strictly
Yep,
population.
and it just goes
Yep.
by the numbers.
I have a question.
Yes.
Number 5, item F, in the event the contract is terminated, any equipment that was partially funded by Rockport, the monetary value of that equipment shall be reimbursed to Rockport on a prorated basis, blah, blah, blah. Equipment procurement agreement date, does that go simultaneous with this?
No, that's another agreement, we're bringing to you, but you haven't seen that yet. We don't have any, the only piece of equipment we currently have, but it's not related to this agreement, is that radar thing, the radar counter.
Movable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if we were purchasing anything jointly for the chief's position, it would be that stuff. And I didn't want to confuse this conversation by bringing a whole new agreement in that you've not seen.
Okay.
So that will be at another meeting.
But we'll be able to see that. My only question is if we approve this, are we somehow on the hook if you go on a spending spree or
I would
something?
suggest that for that clause that we just strike, just end the sentence at prorated basis, period. Because there is no agreement.
There will be. You're gonna have one.
So we're gonna retroactively put a date in here?
We don't have any equipment. We have no plan on buying any equipment, but in the event we did, you'd have to have that agreement.
Why don't we say subject to equipment procurement agreement and not dated, subject to current? That would, then we're not voting on something that doesn't exist. Subject to any concurrent
Yeah, that would work,
agreement that we have.
yeah.
Okay.
Because that way we're not voting now
Yeah.
on something that doesn't yet exist, but we can vote on anything that has been approved.
Yeah, I was trying to avoid this whole, I not even bringing that
Well,
far
look
up.
who you're talking to.
Good luck,
I
good
know.
luck.
Sure, okay.
Thank you, Rick.
Other than that, Mrs.
we-
Mrs.
Other than
Lincoln,
that,
it's
it's perfect.
Do we wish to actually go ahead and take a vote on this? If so, I'll need a motion.
I move to approve the 3-year interlocal agreement with the town of Camden for police chief services for the period of 3 years from July 1st, 2017 to July 30th, 2020, as presented and authorized and amended, and authorize the town manager to sign the agreement.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
And July 1st was when your original contract was up?
Yes.
Yes.
Agreement.
Further discussion?
Is this a contract?
Yeah. Discussion, yes, please.
Yes.
So we constantly deal with situations as they exist now, with personalities and abilities and people as they exist now. And then we are admonished to write policy, et cetera, to the position rather than to the person.
Yes.
Okay. Here, it seems that, and I'm not complaining, but an observation is that this document seems biased towards a perfectly wonderful person. And it gives us an out, for instance, if on 5B, should Camden terminate the current police chief for any reason, or should he become incapacitated for a period of over 30 days, either party may terminate this agreement upon 15 days written notice. Again, that's sort of person versus position thing. I assume we're okay with that, and that structurally, right now we're adopting this because it happens to work really well because we have a really good person.
Well, this comes back to the fact that we are hiring a person.
Okay?
If Camden brings in another chief, we need to reevaluate whether or not we want that chief to serve as our town's chief, either for a limited period or for the remainder of a 3-year contract. But
Fair
it
enough.
has to be opened up again, based on whoever it is, because Chief Cagney is an employee of Camden, and we are contracting with Camden for the use of his services, he being a specific individual.
So we don't walk away after signing this saying we now have an agreement, an inter-town agreement forever and ever. It's just because it's working with the people that we have now.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's right, because I mean, like Bill said, we have an agreement to cooperate and contract for Camden's police chief services, but it's this board's responsibility also to appoint a person to the police chief position in Rockport. And so I think that, you know, that
So it's a
it's
coordination
altogether proper that his name should be in this agreement,
Oh,
because if
yeah,
that's-
I
if that
think
situation
so.
changes, then
And come July 1, the select board will be reappointing or appointing the town officers, which include Chuck, the constable, and his deputies.
Yep.
You remember?
Oh, yeah, no,
Yeah.
I remember
So-
many times.
Yep.
All right, so just, I'm looking forward to the sort of structural changes that may or may not in the future allow the two towns to coordinate more and more services, et cetera. But this could be a blueprint, but is not cast in stone for those people that would disagree with that move.
You didn't mean this could be a blueprint, because I don't see this as a blueprint for anything for
The methodology,
merging.
the methodology of how we go about it.
Okay.
You know, we waited until a propitious time because who wants to consolidate and tell one of your top people, no, see you bye. That wouldn't work from a
Smiling
small
at
town.
propitious.
and I think we're a ways from truly consolidating the departments, but I think the 3-year agreement allows us enough time to perhaps re-examine that as this agreement is drawing to a close. The 1-year agreement was basically to see how it worked. It worked very well. The board at our joint meeting, both our board and Camden's board, felt that 3 years was the appropriate next step. So.
I've even stopped hearing stuff about it. You still hearing anything about it? I've never heard it. They kind of stopped. People stopped talking about it. Yeah.
Well, it works well, and I have to say, I read a news story today about an accident in Rockport that was covered by a Camden officer because the Rockport officers were tied up on another call, and that's just how it's supposed to work, even though the accident was way the heck down in Glen Cove.
So, do we have a?
That has many layers
Yeah,
to
we
it.
have.
That's-
Okay.
Pardon the pun.
All right, we have the motion, yes, correct, because you said as amended.
Yep.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Very good. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
You can go back to work. All right, we're going on to unfinished business. The first item we have is the appointment of Ames Curtis to the Parks Committee. She's already there as an alternate member, and this is to elevate her to be a regular member.
I
And we
move.
Did receive, as we requested, a statement from Ames saying, yes, I really want to do that. And Dave Jackson has also endorsed that.
So I will move to approve the appointment of Ames Curtis from an alternate member to a regular member of the Parks Committee with a term expiration of June 30th, 2018.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
My only comment is we had Ames in here just a short time ago when she was appointed as an alternate. She gave all her reasons for wanting to be on the Parks Committee, and I don't feel we need to repeat that, so.
Yep. Okay. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Very good. They will all be very happy. The next unfinished business item is the consideration of the Town of Rockport Safety Policy Mission Statement. And we have that. And do we have any objections to this, or are we willing to approve it?
Well, for discussion purposes, I will move to approve the Town of Rockport Safety Policy Mission Statement as presented.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Do we have discussion?
My only comment, which I made when I first saw it, was the idea of providing a safe place for employment. And my comment was that some of our employees don't necessarily work in a place, but from place to place. And I had floated the idea, but it didn't go very far, of changing the word place to environment.
Or atmosphere? Yeah, that's,
But I was concerned about, for example, you know, a firefighter entering a burning building is certainly not going into a safe place, but if they are properly equipped and properly trained, it's as safe as it can possibly be. The harbor master going out
Yep.
in a storm is all that sort of thing. So that was my only
You
comment
wish
for there. but-
to amend the
Well, I'm
statement?
gonna leave that to the rest of the board, because the manager seemed to think it was okay as it was.
We're covered by other standard operating guidelines and other policies, but if you want to amend it, if it makes you, you know, you can amend it and approve it as amended.
That's up, I'm not gonna push it, I'll leave it to the rest of the board.
I agree that I think environment is more inclusive.
bingo.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Okay,
I move to amend the motion to replace the words, phrase safe place to safe environment.
Second.
it's moved and seconded. On the amendment, all in favor? And now we go to the original motion. Any further discussion? All in favor? That is done. Very good.
That wasn't too painful.
No, that wasn't.
More.
Acknowledgement of gifts to the town. We received a donation of $2,500 from the Camden National Bank to the Rockport Fire Department. I think this is a very generous donation. I'd like to suggest that we thank them for that donation.
Yes, I think that, I move that we send a letter of gratitude and accept the donation of $2,500 from the Camden National Bank to the Rockport Fire Department. That gratitude is with appreciation. Got all those words in there.
Second.
And it's moved and seconded.
And
Any
I would note that we got a nice letter from the Senior Vice President talking about the fire department's recent assistance at their Hanley Center location. Department was tremendous in their generosity and assistance during a very challenging time. I don't know what the challenging time was, but it speaks well to how our fire department
The issue was
treats people.
the basement. Didn't that happen twice? Isn't that a second time?
That would be the challenge.
Yeah.
All right. Do we have any further discussion? All in favor? That is done. The next item we have is there's a donation of a scoreboard from an anonymous donor for the Babe Ruth Field out at Marge Jones Recreation Facility. And the invoice is here with us. And it comes up to $3,920 and change. You have a motion on this?
We shouldn't be paying sales tax.
We didn't buy it, though.
We didn't.
We didn't buy it.
They should be paying sales tax.
I move to accept the donation of a scoreboard from an anonymous donor for the Babe Ruth Field at the Marge Jones Recreational Facility with appreciation. And ask the town manager to send the donor a letter of thanks on behalf of the select board and the town.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
The only discussion I have is, when we accept a donation like this, where they're actually building something, do we have any liability issues or concerns with the construction of the scoreboard? Or
I believe it's replacing a scoreboard that's already there. Isn't there already a scoreboard there?
It's
So-
there.
Yeah,
but
just
it's
hasn't
falling
worked.
apart.
It's
Right.
just a target.
so we have the liability no matter what.
Okay.
And my question is just, it says specifically installation not included in quote. Do we have to install it? I'm perfectly happy if we have to pay for installation.
No, I believe that the Little League is, Babe Ruth is paying for the installation.
Great.
Okay.
Cool.
Any further discussion?
A thank you letter.
Yep.
That was in the
That was
motion.
in the motion.
Perfect.
Okay. All in favor? That is unanimous. I also found out just as we were coming into the meeting, that the town today received a check for $6,600 from Midcoast Solid Waste in lieu of taxes, payment in lieu of taxes. They've been doing this every year for a couple of years now, and it's now up to $6,600 that they're providing to us.
Well, God bless our representatives to
Yep.
the Midcoast Solid Waste.
I'll make the motion that I, wish that the board to thank Midcoast Solid Waste for that generous donation, and that the town manager send them a letter of thanks.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion.
It's all your fault.
Okay, all in favor? Very good.
I don't discuss free money.
Yeah. The next item that we have is committee resignation. Mario Turi is resigning from the Harbor Committee.
He,
We have his resignation in front of us.
he sent the committee a letter right immediately prior to its last meeting, and he's been a stalwart supporter of the harbor, and the committee was its chair for quite a while. So I make a motion that we accept the resignation of Mario Turi from the Harbor Committee and send him a letter thanking him for his outstanding service.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion? All in favor? And we've taken care of that. We now have committee applications. The first one is for Jeff Hamilton, and this is to the Harbor Committee. He's already an alternate member, and he's indicated his desire to step up to be a regular member. And we have from Sam Temple an endorsement of that.
He actually went from being an alternate member to the vice chair.
When we
in
approve
about-
him as a
when
regular
we-
member.
yeah,
Yeah, there's a little
in-
cart before the horse
In
there.
about 12 seconds after we issued him.
Yeah.
I move to approve the appointment of Jeff Hamilton from an alternate member to a regular member of the Harbor Committee with a term expiration of June 30th, 2019.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion? All in favor? Very good.
I have just a
Yep.
quick one. At the bottom of the sheet for the Harbor Committee, it still lists Brendan as the liaison. Just throwing it out there.
That just needs to be struck.
It's
Those
just
will all have to be changed
clean
next
up.
Yeah,
month
they'll all
anyway.
be
Cleanup
changed next month
purposes.
anyway. All right. And then we also have appointment of Bill Freeman to the Board of Assessment Review, and we have his application here, along with further his background, sort of a resume.
Army.
Hmm?
He's Army.
Well, he's got my vote then. You
I didn't know what he
Marine.
was talking about.
Okay.
I
He
move to appoint,
apparently wasn't able to be here this evening.
I move to approve the appointment of William Freeman as a regular member to the Board of Assessment Review with the term expiration of June 30, 2018.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion?
I note a strong recommendation from Tony Bates, Chair of that committee, who also indicated that he's already taken it upon himself to attend some training. So that's bodes well for his service on that committee.
When Tony drafts you, you know you've been drafted.
Yes. Further comments? And all in favor? Very good. Lost my place here. All right, we are now going on to the audit report, and we have our auditors here this evening. There we go.
Oh my gosh, don't I have enough papers from you?
Yeah.
Oh, my.
Bar graphs.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jim Wadman, and I have with me Juanice Lynch, as usual. Juanice has worked on your audit as a manager for many years, and typically will accompany me when I present your audit. She, again, manages the field work and also drafts your financial statements for you. And so we'll dive right in and keep things moving for you, okay? Pages 1 and 2. This is a 62-page report. I promise you I won't go through all 62 of them, but I am going to start right at the beginning with our opinion letter, the independent auditor's report. And this is where we express our opinion on the financial statements that follow. You folks have what is referred to as an unmodified opinion, which means it's a clean opinion on your financial statements, your note disclosures, and so forth. So basically what we're saying here is these financial statements that follow are a fair presentation for the year ended June 30th of 2016. Management's discussion and analysis is pages 3 through 7, and this allows a reader to read through this information and pick up on your financial highlights for this past fiscal year. And I'm gonna refer you folks to the middle of page number 3, the fund highlights paragraph. If you're all there on page 3, and it talks about your ending combined fund balances being $6,361,559, with $2,314,732 being your general unassigned fund balance, what you may refer to as your surplus. That is an increase this year of about $228,000 from the previous year. It represents approximately 15.5% of your expenses. We're often asked, what should we carry for an unassigned fund balance? What should we have for a surplus? And the Maine Municipal Association has their recommendation that you maintain a minimum of 10 to 12%. So you can see you folks are in a healthy financial position. And if you look at the handout that I've given to you, you look at the last 3 years, you've grown approximately 1% per year for the last 3 fiscal years. From back in 2014 at $1,959,000 up to this $2,314,000 that you're at this year. I've also provided a few other municipalities for you to compare yourselves to: Bar Harbor, the town of Hamden, also the town of Castine. And later in my presentation here, I've got some information on debt as well, because we're often asked, as far as debt level, how are we as far as being within state statute and compared to other municipalities? So we'll touch upon that a little later on. Financial state.
James, if I may, why would Castine be carrying 70%? Is
On an
theirs-
increase of 200,000, it seems like there's
But, yeah,
a
they're,
bad sell there.
No, it isn't a bad sell. Actually, in the years 2014 and 15,
yeah.
they were doing a large project in Castine, in the downtown area. And they were running a lot of that through their general operating fund. And what that was doing was increasing their expenses. So when you look at this as a percentage of expenses, you can see dollar-wise, they're pretty consistent. But in terms of expenses, their annual expenses in those years were much higher because of this infrastructure project they were doing in their downtown. So you'll see, if I continue to present those folks to you, you'll see they're gonna remain in that 70% probably in future years. And one reason that they have so much is they don't do a lot outside of their unassigned fund balance. They don't have a lot of reserve funds. You folks have over $6 million in total fund balances. Their difference between their unassigned fund balance and their total fund balance isn't nearly as big as yours. Okay, I'm asked that question a lot because I often include Castine here because of the debt part of the conversation, so.
I retract my statement,
Quite all right.
my supposition.
Financial statements begin on page number 8. On page number 8 and 9, these financials have got the whole operation of the town rolled in here. All of the numbers are large, all of the town's fixed assets, including infrastructure, sidewalks, town-owned roads, boat ramps, all of that is here. So these, again, there's millions of dollars worth of assets here that can't be converted into a liquid format very easily. So they don't follow your budget process. They are, however, required to be the first 2 financial statements that appear here. But beginning on page 10 and through the remainder of the financial statements, now we're looking at things in a much more liquid format. We don't have fixed assets and debt that's gonna be retired 20 years from now listed. It's only the more current activity.
Can I ask a question?
Certainly.
I must be confused about something. On page 10, under liabilities, deferred inflow of resources, fund balance, accrued salaries payable. That's a 32,000. I've been stuck on this, basically how much like retirement pay you accrue over time and making sure we've got enough money. So if all of our longtime employees happen to retire, we'd have enough money set aside to pay those unfunded liabilities. Is that same line, or is that a different line? What is accrued salaries payable?
That is going to be, and correct me on this one, that is gonna be payroll, payroll taxes, payroll and benefits, basically. It does not include, retirement. That would be considered one of those long-term liabilities that would appear on the previous pages.
And I don't want to confuse like retirement with like MPERS or something like that. It's like our portion of excessive days that they've collected that we would, pay out if they happen to just retire on that day.
Right, what we could refer to as compensated absences, things of that nature.
And I think-
Accumulated vacation and sick pay and things of that nature.
Ah.
It's this line.
And I apologize. I've been stuck on that thing since I found out that it existed, and it just we weren't at like the super duper high level of covering that liability.
I
And we've
think-
got some longstanding employees that have quite a bit built up.
Right, right.
I mean, I think, Owen, and correct me if I'm wrong, that this is a snapshot on one day, and if that day happened to fall in between pay periods or whatever, that's what that is. It's money that people have earned in their regular jobs and they haven't yet been paid, I think.
That's right, that's right. That, based on when payday ends and when the year ends,
Right.
can significantly affect that. Affect that number. Exactly right.
Thank you for indulging me.
And we are seeing, not to get off track, but we are seeing more and more reporting related to these more long-term liabilities of pension obligations. And the new one that's coming, that we're gonna be receiving some training on in the next couple weeks, is related to what is referred to as other post-employment benefits. And so within the public employees retirement system is built in future benefit for retirees for group life insurance. And so that's gonna be something that in another year is gonna start to come onto these financial statements, along with probably several more pages of note disclosures, cause it's just the disclosure on this just keeps getting, more and more. So there is, in other words, there is a general, movement of bringing more of this information onto the financial statements than there used to be in the past, because these liabilities, while they're out there quite a ways in the future, they're real. And so they need to be,
Is this like a change in the gap procedures on the federal end or on the state end?
it's on the federal end, it's on the gap, for the whole country, basically.
Huh.
So this is, the
we're not
Governmental Accounting
special.
Standards Board keeps bringing more of this to the forefront and making it a policy that needs to be followed by you folks and then audited by us, so. Let's see. Your financial statements for your wastewater department are pages 14 through 16. These do include those long-term assets and those long-term liabilities, because these are what are called proprietary funds. And they're supposed to be self-sufficient, operating in a business-like manner. So their financial statements are presented similar to those for the for-profit sector. And we've got notes to the financial statements that begin on page 17, and they go through page 39, I believe. All kinds of, 38, all kinds of accounting policies. There's just a few pages I want to touch upon here. Beginning on page number 22, continuing on to page 23 is the GASB, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board that we were just referring to. One of their more recent statements, statement number 54, has put forth a categorization of your fund balances. And so this basically lists, beginning on 22 and continuing on page 24, these are all of your various fund balances. Whether they are restricted because of state or federal regulation or a donor restriction. You'll see, various trust fund balances here, the portion that can be spent, the portion that's non-spendable. And you work your way all the way to the bottom of page 23, and there again, you'll see your unassigned fund balance, $2,314,732. Everything above that number basically is earmarked for some purpose, either established by the town, or by the board, or by a donor, or some form of statute.
Can I ask a question, sir? The Dodge Fund, it's the only one under these restricted accounts that actually has a negative balance?
It's a library fund, yeah.
Interest that's because of change in the fair value.
Oh,
Flip
okay.
back to the previous page and you'll see the third line up from the very bottom. There's also the Dodge Fund on page 22.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, okay.
So, yes, you got your non-spendable portion of 9280. You've got a deficit there in the spendable portion, and again, that's because of market value has brought it, the total fund balance below the principal portion, so.
They put the turbocharger on.
Okay.
We've got several pages here related to pension plans. And I'm just gonna kind of move you toward the end of this on page number 38, the very final page of the notes to the financial statements. And so this is for the town's participation in the Maine Public Employees Retirement System. And this, these three columns here, the middle column, current discount rate, 7.125%. And so what this is a result of, we basically pull these figures in a lot of accompanying information from the audit that the MPERS goes through on an annual basis. And they prepare these just massive spreadsheets showing all the participants and so forth. And so basically what has come as a result of their audited financial statements is that estimated, the middle column here, this is your estimated net pension liability as of June 30th of 2016, using a rate of 7.125% return on the invested assets of the plan.
Juniper.
If, however, the performance of the plan were off by 1% one way or the other, the numbers would be significantly different. If the plan performed 1% better, your liability, estimated liability would only be $8,686, or almost no liability. But if it went the other way and performed 1% lower, you can see it practically doubles from 146,000 to 292,000. It's almost an exact doubling based on that performance of the investment portfolio.
Over what period does this cover then?
Well, this is looking at years ahead. It's looking at, these are the assets that we have now, but if they are invested for the years ahead based on the participants in the plan for the town of Rockport, based on estimated lifespan and so forth, the actuaries do their computations on this, and the performance of the assets that they presently hold being a return of 7.125%, then there's a relatively small liability here.
Then what is the general thinking about their discounted rate, the 7.125. Is that realistic? Is that optimistic?
I think I think most would say it's optimistic. That's, I present the same presentation to many municipalities and school systems, and everybody looks at that and says, well, that's pretty optimistic, and so,
But this doesn't become an actual liability until our employees retire, correct?
that's right. Your vested employees retire, and then that's when the actual payout takes place.
So I guess in planning, for planning purposes, we went through this at budget time this year as to what amount to deposit into a reserve account to cover that. We should be watching that discount rate then to help us determine how much we
Correct.
salt away for that.
Correct,
Because we do
yeah.
have some employees in town who've been with us for a long time, and whenever they decide to retire, that could be up quite a payout.
Right, right.
And my question is, do we have control of this fund, or is this pooled statewide because it's MPERS?
That's right, exactly.
So we just have to, we don't have decisions we can make to alter return. We just need to monitor the return and make sure that we're kind of squirreling away as what the market's actually panning out versus what we think it may do.
That's exactly
Okay.
right, yeah.
Okay?
Okay. Now, we're gonna get back to some financial statements here, beginning on page 39. What we have here is your budget versus actual financial report on your revenues and expenses for the year, kind of by department. And behind these pages, we have more breakdown for you. But we've got, on the revenue side, this past year, you had a favorable budget variance of $126,836. On the expense side, the expenses, another favorable variance is $125,849. Expenses were below budget. And then down in the transfer section, there's an unfavorable variance, and I believe that was with the library. Is that correct, the transfers from the library?
If you go to A2, see detail there.
Okay. That's right, I have the financial statements here, not you, right? It's actually on page number 42. Yeah, library reimbursements. The bottom of page 42 came in $24,398 below what was budgeted. So on these pages 41 and 42, you can look at your revenues in more detail and see your favorable and unfavorable variances. But again, when it all comes down to the bottom line, including the transfers, $102,438 overall favorable variance. And that $102,438 gets rolled into your unassigned fund balance. On pages 43 and 44 is budget versus actual results for your expenses. And again, this is all the general operating fund, and overall, $125,849 favorable variance on your expenses.
Can I just do one more quick thing? So as we go through this, because you're awesome at this and I'm not, so as we get to like these components, if something has struck you, can you just, hey, I don't like this number, you should concentrate, because it all looks okay to me.
Yeah.
But I don't know any better.
So in other words,
Can you
if
just
see, like,
highlight
something
concerned areas?
unfavorable, for example.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Some things that we should be concerned about, because I mean, there's a ton of numbers in this report.
Yeah, well, a good example of that might be, because sometimes some of these things, will require some explanation. If you look at page 42, under the departmental revenues, and you've got assessing. You budgeted $100, you collected $26,853. And that was, as I reviewed this material, I asked Juanice, well, what's that? What's going on there? And that was in conjunction with the town of Camden.
Right.
So you've got a sizable favorable variance there on your revenues, but then you get over to your expenses, and you look at assessing on page 43. And on the expense side, you're overdrawn. So the two kind of have to be looked at together. Obviously, you had significant more revenue, and as a result, you incurred additional expenses as well, as a result of that service that you worked with Camden, so.
Yeah, we entered into that agreement about mid-year, didn't we?
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it depends on when that was.
yeah.
I think it was
Is it
mid-year of
mid-year?
the prior fiscal year.
Yeah.
And it was
This is the,
towards it wasn't mid-year, it was towards the end of the year and we'd already done the budget.
Yes.
And it had been approved.
Yeah. Yeah. So, if you were to see one side of this, the other, especially on the expense side, you might say, this is, you're not following the budget closely enough. But obviously, you've got this extra on the revenue side to fund it, basically. And looking down through, another one that comes out here is at the top of page 44, your over on general assistance to the tune of $12,237. The same situation, you look back at your revenue, and you got some extra reimbursement back from the state that almost covered that entirely, so. So those are some things that we look at as we even get into an engagement. We look at things on a budget versus actual perspective. We look at things also this year versus last year to see what some of these significant fluctuations are. But overall, you've got some nice favorable variances when you look at budget versus actual.
Yeah, that comes in at when he strikes the. He's asking about the overlay under
Overlay.
assessing. And that's when he does the actual commitment.
Oh,
He
I
has
heard
the-
this is a carry thing that seemed super complicated, to me anyway. this
Every
overlay.
assessor is doing it. When you strike your valuation, well, your actual tax assessment that goes out, that is part of it, to make things rounding. It handles the rounding error.
They have to allow for,
Yeah.
that's where abatements would be charged. for
right,
things,
right.
Things like that. They raise up to 5%, and a lot of towns use that to help build their budget up. They include however much they decide to put in as overlay.
Which budget year is this in as far as the overlay? Because there was one year when we did the reval, we had additional money in the overlay. Last year. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, now on page 45 is kind of where we pull together your changes in your unassigned fund balance or your surplus. Again, you began the year 2,196,445. You ended the year 2,314,732 for a net increase of 118,287. These budget surpluses that we talked about on the previous pages come in at a total of 228,287. And then you used 110,000 of your beginning unassigned fund balance to reduce your tax commitment. So when you put together the entire budget, you looked at how much are we gonna use? And for this year that we audited, you used 110,000. So the budget was, if budget and actual came out right to the penny, your surplus would have gone down by $110,000 this year. Instead, because of your favorable revenues and expenses, budget versus actual, you've actually increased your surplus by that 118,287. So. Okay, any questions there? All right. Now, the financial statements that follow are other funds, special revenue funds, reserve funds, CIP funds. They just take these various funds and break them down into more detail. I typically don't go over those in detail, but if any of you have any questions on these, we can discuss these with you, anything that comes up. But this is where those other fund balances, those other, approximately $4 million in fund balances are all broken down in these pages that follow. If a municipality has significant amounts of federal grant funding or federal loan funding, then there's often numerous pages that follow, related to your compliance and your internal controls related to the spending of those federal monies, but you folks did not fall in that category. So we basically end with financial statements that go through page number 62.
Can I ask a question? We've applied for grants in year 2000, like 10 or something, and we're just now coming into a place where we're gonna realize that grant. When will it hit the books? When we actually get the money? Maybe
You're thinking about the sidewalk
I'm thinking about the
extension?
sidewalk stuff, but I don't think MDOT gives us any money. We give MDOT money, but they gave us a grant to offset the total cost of the project.
Okay.
Because they're not gonna write us a check for anything. We end up writing MDOT a check.
Well, we'll administer, I'm not sure who administers the actual doing of the project. If, that may be a sort of thing where the money comes in from the state and then it goes right back out again to be expensed for the project.
And I guess
Not in that case, just because that one doesn't happen to be a so-called local district project.
Yeah, that's what I wasn't sure of.
If there was any funds handled by a town, it would be Camden in that case.
Oh, right. And I guess the nature of my question is there anything, can I read anything about our town into that, or am I reading in the past, or am I reading in the future? About your lack of reporting on grants? We not applying for enough grants?
No, that's not basically where I'm going with that. But it's basically if you, in a fiscal year, if you expend in excess $750,000 or more, then we get into a whole new level of reporting. We have to do compliance and internal control testing and so forth.
With some of that wastewater grant stuff, but that didn't hit us the $700,000 mark, but.
No.
There were no.
Did we hit that at one point a few years ago?
Either last year or the year before that.
Yeah, we hit that. That's not in this, it was the sewer one? Yep.
It was 500,000, so that could be, and so
Right.
then they just increased it.
They just increased it to
Yeah,
700.
we just went up. When I first started doing this work, it was 25,000.
Wow.
This what was called a single audit for 25,000.
You just been doing this for a long time, or?
I'm 54 years old. I've been doing this for like 75 years. So,
Okay.
That's your accounting skills right there, right?
That's great,
Yeah.
man.
Okay.
so, yeah, and we had to do this
carrying the
work
deficit
on,
forward.
very small amounts of money. So anytime these thresholds go up, we get very excited, so. As far as financial statements go, that's everything we have for you. Does anybody have any other questions on the financial statements?
I didn't.
Okay. We did communicate to you folks this year a few management letter comments, and they're basically related to reconciliation, accounting reconciliation to be prepared for your audit, related to operating cash, having that reconciled for audit, wastewater receivables, and the other was basically related to various projects that may, for example, a project may take place in the wastewater department, but expenses may have been posted in other funds in addition to the wastewater funds. So those need to be all kind of brought into the fund that they belong in versus being possibly paid out of multiple funds, so.
Yeah, I think that may play along with something I noticed, that one of the pie charts rather, had allocations of various things, and it was from the perspective of taxpayers' money, but there was a wastewater account in there as well, which doesn't come out of general taxpayers' money, comes out of users. So that was, in terms of being included in that graph, seemed a little, would be confusing to people reading.
Yeah, and I think in that you're looking back in the early pages of the report.
Yeah,
Yeah, and in that,
page
particular-
2,642, I think.
Yeah, in that particular graph, we're looking at all revenues of the town.
Okay.
Okay, not just general fund revenues, but it's all revenue for the town of Rockport.
Yep.
And the same thing on the expenses, we're looking at all expenses there,
Okay,
so.
yeah.
Let's see. Well, the final thing is on the second page of the handout that I gave to you. and we're often asked about debt. And you folks basically, in total, you're allowed to have debt up to 15% of your state valuation. And Rockport comes in at 0.3% with your debt, so you're well within any limitation that is out there. And there's some definitions on the limitations on pages 21 and 22 in the notes to the financial statements. It talks about various restrictions for schools and wastewater departments or districts and so forth. And you can see Castine, you know, relatively small town, they have $11.2 million worth of debt. But they're still only at below 3.7% of their state valuation. Bar Harbor, with almost $19 million in debt, only 1.34% of their state valuation, so.
Jim, do you see any, is there anything that's like average, do you think, is what do you think is an average for towns you see of percentage of debt?
You know, I think really a lot of what it comes down to is what you have in terms of these utilities, water and wastewater. That's where
Okay,
the majority of the debt is related to this. There's so much compliance that goes into your infrastructure for water and wastewater systems and treatment plants and so forth. That's where the debt is. You know, we may see, you know, many municipalities that don't have wastewater or water, and they have zero debt.
We've got a little bit of an interesting situation here with wastewater because the treatment plant is owned by Camden, and they effectively bill us for our share of their debt. How does that get reflected in this? Because it's not technically our debt, but we owe a percentage of whatever their debt is.
Right.
And it's
So
gonna go
not-
up.
It's not reflected in these numbers because these are Rockport numbers. And you're just billed, like you said, you're billed your share of that.
It's gonna show as an expense.
When we
So
bond,
it's
because
gonna
we're
be
gonna,
part of your,
We may acquire
versus
some
purchase.
debt in the future for that, because the Camden is looking at a fairly major upgrade needed for their treatment plant, and they may ask the voters of Rockport to bond for some of that, so we may acquire some long-term debt there for an asset that's not in Rockport, so I don't know how
right.
that's a different situation.
When we applied for the infrastructure bond, we had to notate that we were responsible for that portion of the
Okay.
The reconciliation issues that you raised, are you satisfied that they have been addressed as they should be?
I believe so. I think, yeah, we've had a fair amount of discussion about that, and I think they're being taken very seriously, and so I would say yes.
I mean, I gather from your letter that they weren't, I mean, any issue is an issue, as you say in the letter, but it didn't seem like they were really egregious problems or anything like that, just a few things that can be improved on.
Right,
That's
right.
my reading of it, and I want to make sure that I'm correct about that.
Yes, that's spot on, and we've had discussion about that as far as going forward, how to, I think it's safe to say that we will not see those in this
Okay.
upcoming year, so.
And then the other question I have regards the percentage of the unassigned fund balance. We have about 15% right now. Our charter, I believe, requires at least 12. But our finance director at budget time told us this year that we really, in order to avoid having to do any tax anticipation notes, that we probably need to stay at the 15%. I just wanted to sort of run that. Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah, I think so. I think, because there's a lot of cost associated with tax anticipation borrowing.
Right.
Not just the interest, but the legal cost of doing that. And that's what many municipalities look at when they measure how much do we need. If you had a municipal school department, for example, you might have some additional funds available during times of the year because you're also treasurer for their cash, but as you know, you don't have that situation. So you're completely operating on town funds. And basically, to look back to the first page of my handout and looking at Bar Harbor, they show a relatively small unassigned fund balance, 509,311. But then what we always do with them is we add in what they call their working capital reserve. And they have built into their fund balance policy, and they also have a working capital reserve policy, that they set aside that extra amount of money for that very purpose, so that they don't have to borrow in anticipation of taxes. So, and they, you can see, they increase that a little bit each year as their budget goes up. It's a percentage of their budget to help with their cash flow, to keep them from having to borrow, so.
Any further questions?
I guess I got
Okay.
two last things. One, high-level overview, we're doing okay? We're doing pretty good here?
Both, yes, you're doing, financially, you're in great financial position.
Okay.
From a standpoint of, yes, we did have a couple of management letter comments, but we think they were being, dealt with. So again, I think that, we will see those go away a year from now. So, and, if that answers, if that was a two-part question, I would say yes and yes, so.
Perfect.
And one of the things about the 15% too is, there's two pieces to it, is, you know, the 12% with the charter was how many years ago? You know, so, and it, you know, we have a lot more money coming and going, and there's a lot more transactions, so the 12% number may be too low, and Megan has alluded to the fact that 15, you know, it's taking us closer to 15% for us to stay ahead of that. And we do get a lot of support from the school, helps, you know, the school finance director and Megan work pretty closely, trying to, you know, eliminate bumps and humps in the road so that there, you know, there's not a big request that we don't expect. So that helps us quite a bit, that relationship between the town and the school, and Megan and Kathy. But it's getting to the point where 15% is closer to the number, because the 12% was whenever the charter was done, 10, 15 years ago, or however long.
10, 12, yep.
Yeah. So it may be, you know, when you're looking at, you know, if you're ever looking at charter revision, is to look at that number again.
I guess that tickled another question. I'm just a little confused, because a percentage is a percentage. It's not a dollar amount. And so regardless of if things increase, if everything's increasing the same, the percentage should theoretically stay the same,
Dollar
shouldn't it?
amounts, yeah, it's just the amount of.
What really hurts us is the school payment. They're due prior to tax due date.
But there's also a bunch of other things that you listed in, when we talked about this before.
Winters play a big effect into it. We have a really rough winter. It makes it for a hard May,
Prior to the 6
For-
month.
February, March, prior to April. We have a light winter, it's not so bad, but we had a pretty heavy winter this year.
But
And also the way money comes into us, people are paying in a different fashion. You know, it comes in, it doesn't come in at the same rate that it did before.
Okay.
And by dint of things growing, it may well be that more people are just late on their taxes.
And I think
that's
more
how-
people are utilizing the 2 payments than I'm just gonna pay it all when it's due in October 1st.
Okay. Thank you for the explanation.
There are actually people that pay the whole thing.
Very good. Any other questions regarding
was an option.
audit? It is our habit that we take a vote to accept the audit and place it on file.
I move to accept the audit report for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2016, as presented by Mr. Wadman.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further comment? All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you both.
Appreciate the time.
Thank you very much.
We originally suggested we'd move the wastewater up to here, but the Conservation Commission is here, and we have a very young member of the committee as well,
Being very
a future member. So why don't we, if you have no objection, why don't we skip forward and take the Conservation Commission presentation and then come back to wastewater? Is that acceptable?
So moved.
Okay.
Thank you.
Who's coming up?
Thank you.
Okay.
We'll sit in the front row,
Yeah.
so.
If you're gonna speak, you gotta go to the.
You gotta come to the podium to speak, though.
Well, I'll come up for my part.
This cracked me up.
Bathers.
A lot of people bathing in the harbor.
Yeah.
Jeff, I put a tab on the screen there, June,
It's gone. This is not your father's Oldsmobile.
I haven't had a chance to access it
Oh.
it's in the mail, is what I was trying to.
The check's in the mail?
The Goober's in the mail. Look, blue dot next to it, unread.
Next on the agenda was the rec committee.
Oh,
And,
that's me.
We were asked to combine them
Yes,
yeah,
as one.
then that's me.
the
So I
rec
should go
committee
first.
isn't here, so
It's another two-part.
Well,
we'll speak
I'm
for
here
our
on-
part.
Suzanne had sent me a message saying that she had a sick child at home.
oh, okay.
And because it was for the tick control options for Marge Jones, that was also tasked out to the Conservation Commission. Do we need to
I
wait for
think they're
that?
having fun.
Do we need to wait for that?
that one.
I'll go first.
Oh,
Okay, this is for you, right?
Yeah, that's great.
Do you want me to go quickly first, though?
Yes.
Go right ahead.
I don't have.
However you folks want to work it out, you're all,
I have-
all one group.
Well, this is kind of, I guess, so.
Mm-hmm.
This is the tick stuff, or?
This is different tick stuff.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I should have handed them all at the same time. I failed as a classroom teacher.
Your classes
thank you
aren't
very
as contentious as these.
Okay.
So we have a problem with ticks in Mid-Coast Maine, which we all know. Suzanne had reached out saying that some of the kids had had ticks on them. So we've explored a handful of different options, all of which are local companies. I pulled the Town of Rockport Pest Management Policy, and in it, it talks about the Pest Management Advisory Committee. Does that committee exist?
We had tasked that to the Conservation Commission,
It was just last
about a
year.
year or so ago,
Yeah,
although
about a
this,
year.
this policy is a little different than the one, but at any rate, yeah,
And
so-
just before she goes, there was also a little bit of confusion. We approved this in 2008. Was that committee put together specifically to get the recommendation for us for the 2008 approval, which I was not here for? Like what did those people do?
I think that committee, quite honestly, this policy was approved and then the committee just never existed. And so a year or so ago, I had made the suggestion and the board acted on it. I said, well, we've got the Conservation Commission, they're doing that sort of work anyway. It would make sense to make them the pesticide advisory board, although in this iteration of the policy, which I'm not that familiar with, actually specifically lays out people who should be on that advisory
It's
committee,
pretty
which is.
broad-reaching too.
Which is a little different than what I had
Yeah, if-
recalled
yeah, if
prior.
you
But
guys
at any
wanna-
rate, we did give that responsibility to the Conservation Commission about a year ago, I think.
Now we know.
Thank you for letting the commission know.
I knew.
But I feel like we actually need to act in haste and was hoping to get this accomplished within the next 2 weeks or, by the end of the month, is the plan, or hopefully if we can move that quickly. So the options that I have given to you guys, these 3 options are 3 local companies. TikTok, Paul McFarland. He has recommended 2 applications, and that's of the pesticide bifenthrin, which I gave you a sheet on, because that would go against our Town of Rockport Pest Management Policy, although when an activity raises threats of harm to the environment or human health, precautionary measures should be taken, even if those cause and effect relationship
that are not yet fully established. So I think that ticks kind of fall within that realm for the bodily harm. So we should talk about using a pesticide. Option 2, greener grounds. He uses a natural spray, which is comprised of cedar, peppermint, and GABA and other natural oils. That application is double in the price, and you have to do it more frequently. So you're looking at a higher cost. And then the third option, which doesn't use any pesticides or spraying, would be the tick barrier. We would still probably have to spray for that because you're not gonna have a cedar barrier on your outfield, because kids might have to run out into the, woods after a ball, and you're not gonna have them running through the cedar swath. So those are the options. I don't know if we can discuss them tonight, or if you guys wanna take these and discuss them further, or if I should just work with Rick and Suzanne Jandro.
I'll raise one thing real quick. On page 4 of our policy, near in the bottom, emergency situations and exemptions, it looks like we have given the authority for the town manager to grant a waiver, but only after they meet with the Pest Management Advisory Committee.
We're here, we're here.
Yeah, we're just looking for the Conservation Commission to make a recommendation. Which
And I
do you
only
think?
bring that up as far as for voting purposes, it appears, if we thought that the ticks had risen to a level of emergency, Rick's allowed to make a determination
don't have to vote on
outside
it.
of, yep.
Yeah.
And it's, and the money would have to be found in the budget someplace, so that the $12,000 to $15,000 one might be hard to find in the budget.
And that may be something that we look at, because that's a long-term solution. If we went with option 2, we're gonna be up to $4,000, $5,000 this year alone. So I think it's a good conversation to have. Maybe, and my suggestion in the short term would be to use Paul McFarland of TikTok and spray the bifenthrin.
Are you speaking for the Conservation Commission as a whole, or?
Yes.
Okay.
I was approached today by a citizen who saw this on the agenda and said, why are we not burning? And I had no clue what they're talking about, but apparently it is getting or growing in popularity in some areas to burn the brush right
Like
around.
blueberry burning.
Like blueberry
Yeah.
Yeah,
fields?
like with the
Well,
rotating
and-
fire, yes.
Yeah, I would have Mike talk
Fried ticks
to burning the perimeter around Marge Jones. I don't know if that's feasible, maybe.
Talk to the fire department,
Yeah,
Well, the habitat for ticks is leaf litter. That's how they winter over, in leaf litter, so that's where you're gonna find them.
okay.
So if you're shuffling around out in the leaves looking for a baseball, that's when you're gonna catch a tick on your ankle or something of that
Geez,
nature.
there's only one water point at that facility. They'd have to truck stuff in to be on standby, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I don't think there's a hydrant out there.
No, there's just a
It's just a-
spigot.
Yeah.
Well, you'd have to have the tanker
that's
truck
another
out.
option
For
for
the
long
school.
term. Yeah, for long term. My hope and my goal tonight was to get an okay so that we could move forward and get this done sooner rather than later. They're playing out there now. They're playing games, and they will be through the fall, and then soccer starts. So we're using this field. The only thing that I wish that I had done that I did not was talk to the facilities manager for the schools, because I'm wondering what they're doing, because some of their fields are in closer proximity to the woods, and I know that, the school has a big problem as well.
You know?
So when they spray,
Yes,
where do they spray?
They-
If we use that TikTok.
they spray only in the perimeter of the field, and that's why I included the linear feet, the 2,687 linear feet on the top of the tick options. So both TikTok and Greener Grounds would spray the perimeters.
So, it's, we certainly all have read that this year in particular is a banner year for ticks. I would presume that just in terms of, tell me if I'm wrong, but on a technical basis, that there's already ticks inside of the perimeter, or do they only hang out in that zone that's comfortable to them?
They
over the
don't
winter?
like the shorter grass, so they're gonna stay probably in the perimeters. Not to say that they won't ride on something
Right.
onto the shorter grass.
So the perimeter treatment is the appropriate treatment for two reasons. One, to kill them if you use the bifenthrin, and or to keep them at bay if
Yes.
you use the.
Well, and that's what the Greener Grounds does. It kind of, it kills, but it also keeps them at bay.
So the
and it
greener
wears
ground,
off quickly.
because of the cedar component, I mean, I'm assuming cedar being common to both 2 and 3, that
Yep.
that's the stay away, you
Yep,
nasty
they don't like the
ticks.
cedar. And then the cedar, the chip barrier, they don't like to crawl through it. So it's just a deterrent for them. It might be something that we want to do on different areas of it, but kind of time is of the essence because something needs to be done soon.
So does the Conscom have a recommendation? Do they like the option 1 as well? Do you think that's a good option?
For the
For the short term,
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of where I think we're all at right now is they're out there playing.
Mhm.
So they'll have to do something. It's, you just don't want someone really getting,
Oh, yeah.
a bunch of kids getting Lyme disease or anything like that. That's,
Well, it is important for the kids to understand, this will not totally eliminate the ticks.
Right, no.
It's, you know, it will reduce the incidence of them. If a kid runs in the woods, they're still
And
gonna be
this is
liable.
only
and so
our
there's,
field.
You know, they need, but even if they're on the field, they could still
Yeah.
get a tick after this,
They're,
so.
they're playing on other ball fields as well.
But it's important for them to understand that they have to do tick checks and that sort of thing, so.
Can I ask the Conservation Committee, is this something you guys talked about at a meeting, or just this is your reaction in the last 10 minutes of,
Talked about it at our last meeting.
okay.
We had Suzanne Jondro in our last setting with
Right.
us, and we all talked
And,
about
and
it.
I'm wondering about the conversation about option 2, because personally, I would at least want to have some energy in exploring that before we, cut it entirely. I understand that it is likely to be more money. It's $3,200 if you do 4.
Every 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Yep. Did you want to speak to the natural? Because you talked to them today, some other people.
I had Sue contact a company, that's what they do is spray ball fields, that's basically all they do. They said they've not had any luck with natural at this point, they have the capability to do anything anybody wants, but they recommended actually spraying rather than the perimeter with a pesticide than going with a natural. They've not had any luck with natural stuff that they've reported. And I have a price from them as well, but they do have the capability to do, whatever they want, and that's what they recommended, doing the perimeter.
And I haven't had a chance to fully read the handout, National
So
Pesticide
I-
Information Center.
Yeah, and I just provided that, so you had some more information on the bifenthrin.
Well, what are we have used TikTok at my house, and anecdotally anyway, we were told, and this appears to back it up, that as long as the conditions, the environmental conditions when they apply, meaning kind of warm, non-rainy, it evaporates at such a rapid rate that within a handful, an hour and a half to 2 hours, it's benign. And my kids go,
Well, it's not benign to the ticks.
Well, I hope
well, I mean, that's the whole thing.
And I
As
would-
far as to humans.
Yeah.
I'm more concerned about the bees than the humans. I think we're safe. It's a small percentage of the formula. It's a 7%. The warnings in there are if you spray it into your mouth.
Yeah.
We're not doing that. And we would spray it at a time early in the morning before the kids are out playing on the field. I mean, we will strategically spray. I also talked with Megan Patterson during our eco-friendly lawn care forum about it because, like Owen said, we spray our yard with it. And she said, most definitely use it. Even the things that they're saying are natural, that doesn't mean that they're safe. If you eat too much eucalyptus oil, you're gonna get sick. So it's one of those things we need to look out for the kids, and Lyme disease is prevalent in this area, and we don't want our kids. Obviously, education is first, Ken, you're totally right. We need to make sure everyone's checking for ticks, but if there's other things that we can do to minimize
Okay.
the bites, we should. So
Well, I
should,
think per the policy, the Conservation Commission can make a recommendation to the town manager and he can handle it. We don't need to.
The time of the year matters though. I
Right.
wonder if it matters spring before, spring actually blooms and the bees are here. And we talked about possibly doing it right after winter and then right in the fall. So I don't know if this year works specifically. I don't know if we're too late.
we're not too late, other than making sure that we take really good care and not to spray the flowers, if there are any in the perimeter of Marge Jones.
Well, wouldn't,
Mike?
Wouldn't this
Do we have a
Paul,
big, massive flower blooms over there right now? No. Okay.
wouldn't this Paul McFarland know when we should and how we should apply this?
Yes, and the other great thing about Paul McFarland is that he had 2 boys go through the system. He's a Rockport native.
Yeah.
And has intimate details of Marge Jones from being a former coach. So when I talked to him about it, he knew more about the fields than I know about the fields. So I think that he would be our best bet. Not to say that Evan wouldn't be, because he was great too. He drove right out there today and toured the facility. And I think that he would be a great person to talk to about on-field applications of organic matter to keep down the crabgrass and the grubs and stuff like that. I'd like to use a local company instead of outsourcing. And he's moving in on Route 90 as well. So these are all Rockport-based companies.
Do we have warning signs out there? I've seen them in places, warning, tick infestation, and then a little blurb about make sure you do a tick check.
I was gonna say we'll put it on 17 coming in, Route 90 coming
I
in,
mean
and
at the
Route
No,
1
I
coming
like
in.
that idea, though. We'll discuss
Skirt
that in
the
our
whole
next meeting.
town.
'cause we
It
do
was
have
in the
money
main
for
townsman
signage.
that they had the sign there.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, there you go.
There it is. I like that idea, and we'll discuss that in our next meeting.
Want it?
There is, in our town policy, when you spray, if you spray, there are guidelines and signage requirements that
Oh, yeah.
obviously whoever
But I
sprays
mean,
will.
just having a warning sign out there at the Marge Jones Field where people can see it, that
Yeah.
there are ticks. We may have sprayed, but you may have a chance of getting it if you go too deep.
I mean, is this something we should ask the people to vote on? Is it up to, is that something that you let people decide on their own?
I think the Recreation Committee could come to us with a recommendation of signage.
That's been percolating since rec started meeting, was a desire to at least reinvigorate a conversation around pesticides. And are there appropriate town-owned properties where we should use organic things, like maybe the town office? And are there other town-owned properties where the best thing would be some mild pesticide controls, meaning primarily Marge Jones and places, ball fields and things like that? They would like to have that conversation, but that would take an ordinance change.
Okay,
We started that conversation last week when we met,
okay,
when she met with our committee.
okay. Well,
I gotta
think,
get the ticks out of my hair.
Yeah.
I think,
I
yeah,
pulled
you
four
think-
off me the other day.
So I'm hearing 2 things. I'm hearing immediate situation, and then I'm hearing long-term, do we do it again right at the cusp of spring and that sort of thing? And that's really 2 budget items. But, I mean, speaking about budget and about pulling money out of places where it,
well, we need to do this now.
yeah, no, I get that. But
We do
do
have,
we want to
we still have a
additionally-
little bit of money left in the Conservation Commission budget, maybe for the first application.
Sold.
And
I
rec-
guess
rec will
what
do
we
the second.
what we need and what we wanted just is kind of your nod and seal of approval, since we didn't, the Pesticide Management Advisory Committee. I'm a new member of the Conservation Commission. Most of us are fairly new and didn't know that that was one of our tasks. So,
Well, I think we're in agreement that this bifenthrin, whatever,
Bifenthrin.
should be done quickly, and that the town manager has the authority to execute
I
it.
think what I would suggest is that for the Conservation Commission to put their recommendation in writing, just so the town manager
Yeah.
has it
Okay.
on
And then we
file,
can
and
get going
then
on
the
it.
town manager can act on it under the emergency clause of the policy.
And the last thing I would note is only because I've gotten emails about, we're talking pesticides on the state level, and so just the concern about bees, if part of it could just be acknowledging to Paul McFarland, if that's the vendor we choose to go through, that he takes additional precautions to try to minimize any damage to bees. They're pretty important.
yeah. But once it's sprayed, it binds to the soil and the plants, and then the bees are okay as long as they're not.
It was amazing. Not to like belabor this, but we had our dog and he would come in with 12 to 17 to 20 ticks. Paul came and sprayed. The very next day he would run out in the woods and he would come in clean. It was like amazing.
Okay.
So is there a motion on the table?
No,
None needed, I don't.
None
believe.
needed.
none need, yeah. we
Thank you
just-
then.
So I just want to, because there's no vote, for me to go on the other side, not because I don't want to spray with option one, but I just want to have somewhere a reminder that our emphasis should be towards things that are less chemically, you know,
And Jeff, if
oriented.
that's the case, I'm gonna push for the cedar boundary, because that's a,
I think it's a reasonable thing to push for. And that's what I'm saying is, let's not forget to push for it. Whether it's successful or not, I don't know. But
Right.
if a mound of cedar
well, and that
chips.
could be a conversation that Mike has with the Conservation Commission, because I got a quote from Rockport Landscaping. But if the town could do it, we could, you know, right, we could absorb a lot of that cost, probably.
So I mentioned that only because if, you know, I would be fine with a 3-1 vote, which is just a reminder that, hey, this is fine for a short term, let's do that as a long term. So that's all, I wanted to just
No, and
have
I'm with
Linda
you,
put it
just
in the-
logistically,
in
number
the
one, I know we didn't have the
minutes.
money in our budget, and number two, no way could we do
Yeah.
that quickly.
Basically, I'm like Trump, I like to look at my name in the minutes.
When we come back with the long-term options or recommendations, are you asking us to look beyond just the ball field and at other public spaces?
I would think
or
that falls within your purview, and it would be perfectly appropriate for you to do that.
We need kind of a comprehensive plan.
Are there any other things that the Conservation Commission has been tasked with that we should know about?
The Conservation Commission knew about this. Let me be clear about that.
Okay.
They were, and Kim is nodding. She knows
Okay.
that it was the Pesticide Advisory Board, so, that's, yeah.
Okay, great.
The last thing, when you all go and do this, when
we're
you
not done.
when you're working on your long-term projection stuff, just make sure to loop rec in, because they do have a pretty robust volunteer base. So if we do decide to go the public works route to minimize costs, I think that they'd be a great avenue to look for folks that would help spread out stuff when we get to that point.
Just a clarifying point, this committee's being asked for a recommendation, not for a source of funds.
Yeah.
Correct.
No, but we'll take their funds if they want to do it.
I'd rather not. I'd rather leave their,
Well, it's-
funds.
The town manager has discretion to
Yeah.
use the funds that he's.
If we need to go over in the rec budget, we go over in the rec budget, but the funds you have for conservation should be for conservation.
He's gonna take it from Abby's, so.
Yeah.
Oh, Mike's looking back there and he knows where it's gonna come from, but
All right. Very
Okay.
good.
So now I'm gonna turn it over to Kim, who's gonna talk about Conservation Commission and our long-term goals that we brought for you tonight, which now include the pesticide advisory committee.
Which I didn't know we were, but I'm proud to be, also have that, right?
Add it to your resume.
Absolutely.
So you wanna go with the PowerPoint?
Yeah, well, I think that's easier.
Okay.
And then in the
Oh, it's 4-3.
memo from Jamie,
It does the same work.
okay, this is about the work that we have done on testing the waters that flow into Rockport Harbor. We're gonna start with, on your memo, implementing the best management practices. And one of the biggest things that we're suggesting is to implement a no pet policy on Goodies Beach. So I think that would be a new ordinance, or it would actually be an enforcement of policy.
I think those might wind up being kind of, you're talking those, Kim, and the select board will maybe wanna look at, the memo, because we did talk about how are they gonna implement it, and this is what action-oriented board, and they do need that, so, let me join you up there. Bob Kennedy provided a PowerPoint to make sure that we covered these items and don't miss anything. But basically, the first topic we want to cover is Goodies Beach, and that's the only one that I've been trying to become somewhat knowledgeable about and helping out with this committee. So the first three recommendations that you see in your memo are things that we think we need the select board for. So don't wander off to page 2, because that's just stuff that the commission can implement on its own primarily. So the first one is close Goodies Beach after it rains. We've been doing this for a couple of years. Abby's familiar with a protocol that Bob Kennedy designed for the Conservation Commission, and that Maine Healthy Beaches picked up and started promoting statewide. So we must be doing something right, where we don't know everything we'd like to know about the sources of pollution, We do know it comes on strong after a rain. And Bob made a little formula that says, if it's been raining for so long, and here's how much rain you got, Abby has a rain gauge, here's how long you need to close the beach.
Are we officially closing the beach?
No.
Right, post it.
Yeah.
Post it as an advisory.
It's for a health advisory. Right.
Well, those terms, we probably need to get firmed on. I called it close the beach to bathers, but there's obviously a better way of saying that. And the suggestion here is to go from this trial period that's been a few years now and actually make it a policy of the harbor, of the select board. I don't know whether there's a separate ordinance for it. I haven't found one. So there's a decision to be made about how you're going to codify that. And then the next one, the next two are just sort of maintenance activities. Last thing you want is your planner doing your day-to-day maintenance, but we're trying to hand off recommendations from the commission. The first one is have town staff clean up the seaweed at least weekly during the warm weather season. And the second one is the most controversial, I think, which is to ban dogs from Goodies Beach at all times. And that was a difficult one for the commission. I'll leave that to you as the political leadership. You know, that certainly got talked about, and a lot of alternatives were raised and dismissed. But these three items take some kind of select board action, a policy or an ordinance.
Yeah, I don't.
And the commission recommends these three items. You don't think we need to go to the ordinance?
I think the first two we can do without select board.
Yeah.
You know, the first one we're doing now, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
We're already doing that.
And actually,
And the second one is, we can just do that.
what stood out to me is if we were to implement the first one and then we were to fix our pollution problem, we would have to reverse that policy because every time it rained, it wouldn't be polluting the harbor anymore, but Abby would be required to close the beach, even though we've fixed our pollution problem.
Yes.
The only ordinance that we wanted was the dog ordinance. These
Yeah.
are just our recommendations.
Yeah.
This is just what we've been doing.
And at the bottom of that one, it is the only one where we say there might need to be an ordinance. And that also, I suggest, wait until you see how it goes after a summer. See what issues might come up that actually are ordinance worthy. Heaven forbid you needed to kind of specify what the consequences are for offenders. You know, that may be why it would lead to an ordinance. Abby's right here.
So, I happen to be pretty passionate about water quality, but I think what the point of the number one is that if you get someone in there that isn't, that it somehow, I don't know if you put it in if we are directed to put it in the job description or something, because there's nothing really in I just sort of started as Maine Healthy Beaches and working with Bob Kennedy and then saying, okay, well, what do we do about rainfall? And then it is part of my daily process.
We can do that internally.
Right, right. I think that's all that, I think what.
And number two, we can do that internally.
1 and
It's
2
three.
end with select board tells the town manager, go do it.
Right.
And the third one has the possibility of leading to an ordinance. These are pretty simple, but you I think very helpfully wanted the commission to really think on these, and they're among the sort of housekeeping recommendations from the feasibility study last November. And you might want to talk about these things or just give us some kind of sense that the commission's on the right track in adopting these recommendations. Then we can move on to a report on the next couple of pages, or I'll skip right ahead to it.
Well, before we go on,
Okay.
on this item on banning dogs, first of all, is it necessary to ban them in January and December and February? Or is this only for the time period when people are typically gonna be using the beach, mid-May to mid-October? You know, but with that said, you look at what's happened in other communities when this kind of thing has been proposed. We're not gonna adopt this on just one night of work. It's gonna have to go to a public hearing and taking input and reviewing and discussing and before it can actually be adopted, because there will be pushback. You see it in every other community that has proposed this.
We talked a lot about the time period. I know even though there may not be people swimming or in the water in the winter months, are we okay, if that is a source of contamination, are we okay with it existing in certain months and not in summer months? It just didn't seem logical that we would implement it for just certain months. So that's how we came up with a full.
Okay. Well,
I-
We're not banning dogs because they're dangerous, we're banning dogs because of the pollution. This is
Right.
all stemming from the pollution and us trying to figure, we've been tasked with something.
If we have any more dialogue, you don't want to jump up to the mic. So, Mr. Chair, are you saying that this is a good way for this to become on the agenda of a subsequent meeting, or are we going to be discussing this further tonight?
well, I'm suggesting before we do anything, we need to have something in writing that people can read and react to.
Well, Mr. Chair, if I could, as the recommendations are presented, it says direct town staff. This board can't direct town staff. We can direct the town manager to do things, and I think that that's the proper way to do it right now, is to have
you
the
don't
town staff do these things.
You don't need to focus on one or two, because we're already doing
Right,
that.
but even
Number
number
one and
three,
two.
I think that.
Number
and
three is
what
the
we
one
have
we
heard
need
about before, and we got it in recommendation from the Gartley and Dorsey report, and now the Conservation Commission is coming back with a recommendation. And some of the parts of the recommendation were, let's try it for a season and see how it works. I don't think at this point we want to go the ordinance route. That's the route that requires the public hearing and would require a vote by the town, and that's where you're going to get some pushback. I think that if we can go at this point, particularly because it's a small beach, granted it's a place for dogs to go frolic in the water, and they probably like it, but there's a lot of other places where they can do that. It seems to me that we could handle this on an administrative level at this point and just say, okay, let's put some signs up this summer, and the signs can be very friendly. You know, please, because of dog waste issues at this beach where young children swim, we ask you, we are prohibiting dogs from, at this point forward, or whatever date you want to put on there. Thank you very much for your cooperation, or something like that, and see how it goes. And Abby can let us know too with time. Are there people that are looking at the signs and saying, "Oh, the hell with them, I'm going to take the dog down there anyway"? Or are they looking at the signs and say, "Oh, yeah, that makes sense. I guess I'll take Fido someplace else"?
Well, the issue is, we haven't let anybody else know that we're possibly taking this action. And if we just make an announcement, no more dogs on the beach, I mean, who is here to take the other side of it and stand up? Because nobody's gotten this word.
You are. You take Zeus down there.
I don't take him
twice a
on the
day.
beach. I don't take him on the beach. He's on the leash.
You need to remember that this is not a safety issue, it's a pollution
I
issue.
know. And I go back to what our original studies did, and they were human-sourced pollution. There were tobacco products, and there were acetaminophen or ibuprofen or something like that, which was the predominant amount in there.
I think we're just trying to eliminate all the possible,
Pardon the pun?
The easy and the possible.
yeah,
Right.
possibilities, and temporarily is probably better in approaching it and saying we'd like to try a 3-month ban of dogs and see if our water improves, because we'll be sampling all along. It's sort of,
And that's very targeted for the beach.
right.
So, the advice to you is this should take the form of select board direction to the town manager for appropriate staff assignments. And when you had a select board that looked like, and they're in agreement, you make the town manager's job easier. But if you're not there, you might need to vote on how to direct the town manager. And if it's just one summer, are we likely to attract that type of public participation that you're talking about, Bill? Unfortunately, I think there's no better way than than to put the sign out there and receive that feedback full on and deal with it prior to a public process that might involve an ordinance.
It's an interesting theory.
That's how
Provocation.
I like it. It's a very interesting theory.
But again, part of that is education. How would we,
Up to the
the
mic.
way of knowing
You need to go to the mic.
is that we put something.
Would you come up to the mic, please?
Very tough.
If we announce that we're going to be doing this, trying to for the summertime and explain it, put it out in a newspaper, in an article,
Right.
that would help educate people as to what the intention is and why we're doing it.
So let me bounce that question right back at you. I concur with Bill in my memory that the big thing about the pollution at Goodies Beach was from the watershed coming down from a non-point source of waste that had traces that, when analyzed, had traces of human activity. So I had in mind the raccoon sitting in the thing smoking cigarettes. So the question is, has the committee had technical information that that says a third of our pollution is comprised of stuff that certainly is indicated by dog feces?
No, if you remember reading in the Gartley and Dorsey report that they had suggested a number of other problems that could be causing this pollution, and what we're trying to do is eliminate as much as we can, as many items as we can. And this is, again, not saying that dogs are causing this, because I remember when we put up the dog stations for people to pick up the dog waste, there was some pushback on that also. And someone did send an email to the Conservation Commission saying, well, my dog doesn't go in the water and poo there. Why don't you check the birds? So yes, there is that pushback. But again, what we're trying to do is go along with the recommendations kind of from Gartley and Dorsey, maybe expanding on some of these areas, and that would be maybe the dog option. But again, it's a matter of, if we did, as you suggested, try it out maybe just for this summer and see, how people react and everything else, and just let them know ahead of time, educate. That's what I think what the commission is all about, is that we try to educate before we could do anything else and make recommendations.
And it's not like that once they're down there that we can't say to them, you can't swim at the beach, but if your dog, if it's hot and your dog really wants to go for a swim, take them over to the boat launch and they can go in the water there. It's,
Right.
They can go for a swim there and get wet and cooled off. It's just not on the beach. It's not like they have no option of where to go.
Right, and they can be we're not banning
Even
them
from
from the
the
park.
park.
They can be everywhere.
Right.
And the studies are.
Microphone.
The studies are of mammal.
Mike,
species.
Mike.
I believe, and I wish that Bob was here to confirm this, but what's closing our beaches is from any warm-blooded, any mammal feces. So yes, you're right about reading about the nicotine and the prescription drugs and all of that found, because we've done so many studies to try to pinpoint this source. But I believe the main cause of what's closing the beach is from your poop, your dog's poop, cow poop, who knows?
Yep.
I also recall it that way. That it's primarily not just domesticated pets, but also wild animals. The wetlands is a very well-habitated place. And then the few occasions when we've been able to do some of the fancier testing, we brought back that information about metabolites that had been through a human body. But I hesitate to ask, but if anybody would like a spare copy,
Yeah.
I did bring those along. And what can we do to wrap up with these first three recommendations that we think involve the select board, down the town manager?
How many times do I have to
The
say
first
that?
and second
First
ones
and
have already
second-
been done.
There
We
are-
don't have to do them again.
Don't bring that up again.
Yeah.
For number one and number two, we're doing internally.
And I think that the commission would be happy to just have it be temporary. We're going to talk in a little bit about another temporary thing that we're going to suggest. So if we can temporarily ban dogs from Goodies Beach while we're testing this summer, I think that would be a really good solution to this. It doesn't have to be a permanent.
So from a scientific method, you would change one thing and then you would test. So this is the change, and then it goes with the same amount of tests.
There's some other educational things, like we're gonna try to inform voters to use the pump out
Sure.
station.
Yeah, I saw that,
we're-
yeah.
So there's a couple of things that we've been pointed at and saying this is why Rockport Harbor is so polluted. And dogs on the beach and dog feces being stuck in seaweed rack is part of the issue. I mean, none of it is conclusive. We all are trying to figure out, well, let's eliminate this, this, and this, and keep testing and see if our results improve. I mean,
If you
I
remem-
understand the pushback on the dogs.
If you remember, Bob Kennedy said when we were doing the investigation of the sewer lines, that it would be likely that even if we found the smoking gun, that we wouldn't eliminate everything. We'd still potentially have a problem there because of, there's a bunch of contributing factors.
Right.
And, you know, we have 2 dogs, and I just think, most responsible dog owners would, I mean, they would say, you know, the expectation is that you don't have your dog go to the beach where people are swimming, particularly not in such a small beach. We do have another place where they could swim. It's easy. They can just go over there and take, you know.
Right. Well,
Is
and
there
we
a
thought
poop
what we would,
station going right down those?
Yes, there
Yeah,
is.
there's
Right-
a
Right at
couple
the
of
step,
go down
out of
the
the
steps.
steps.
we thought we would let people know that the dog park is right down the road too, and
Yep.
Lake Beach is open to dogs, in the evening. We thought
You're
we
gonna
would,
push
we
them
would,
into-
well, no, but
Perfect.
we would let them know that if you wanted to take your
The
dogs
other
to the
pollution.
beach,
They've
Been
we
shifted
do
all
have
their
a dog,
birds to us.
right, we do have a dog-friendly
okay.
beach in the neighborhood.
Mr. Chairman, in the interest of moving this along,
Yes.
I'm gonna make a motion that we direct the town manager to, cause signage should be put up prohibiting dogs at Goodies Beach, effective until November 1st, 2017.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
My only issue with that, or are we in discussion purposes?
We're in discussion.
My only issue with that is the methodical nature that one would want to follow if we were attempting to pinpoint the source. Because I know that when we flip to the next page, there's going to be more recommendations. And the only thing that's in the back of my mind is if we ban dogs and install the pipe that would get the effluent further out.
Which was the one that did it.
Which is the one that did it. But it's almost like if we do both and we're seeing extremely positive results from doing both, might as well roll with it, and then maybe you do. So the only question is, do we want to be more methodical about a testing regime with one alteration and then a testing regime with a different alteration, or do we want to do
These
low-cost-
recommendations are for fiscal year 18-19.
Well, but
15,
Oh.
18-19. This is, we're
I
going
think- I
into
mean,
17-18.
it doesn't cost anything to tell people.
And I was
not
going to say,
dump
this
their
is
head
low
overboard.
cost, no cost.
And I mean, on the very face of it, forget the testing and the scientific and all this kind of stuff. This action will likely reduce the possibility of a kid stepping in a pile of dog stuff or finding a dog turd floating in the water at the beach.
That's
Let's
a
just
rite
do
of
it.
passage,
Right.
Ken.
Well,
And I agree with you completely, other than we have not given anybody else an opportunity to speak on this topic. And you,
We'll
we're
hear
saying,
from- we
you
will hear
can't
from
do this anymore in Rockport. And they haven't had a chance
No,
to
we're only
react to
saying
it.
we can't do it till November 1st, number one, and number
No.
two, we're
Right,
not
and when they
adopting an
ask-
ordinance, and there are no penalties.
when they ask why,
Then
we
what's
will
the
let
point
them
of
know
What's the
that,
point of taking this direction if there are no penalties?
Because you put a sign up and you see what the response is. I think that's the whole idea. Is let's see how it happens. Let's see if responsible dog owners look at it and say, you know what, they're right. That's a good idea. Let me take Rover someplace else. I think there's hardly any downside to doing this.
So for purposes of discussion, if I raise my hand in an unusual way, it would be because, no one is going to mistake me for a dog lover. Not gonna happen. However, from just a scientific standpoint, the acres and acres and acres of watershed that feed down to there, bringing all this stuff with it, I just can't imagine that that's not 98% of the fecal matter that's found in the thing, and then that the 2% of the actual physical dogs being on the beach seems to me to be not a dent in it. And if it was my property, absolutely, I'd say I'm not going to bring the dog down here because every little bit helps. But because it is a piece of property used by many, many, many people, I'm going to vote to abstain because I don't feel as though I have the information.
My only thing challenging that thought is, I would argue that a dog taking a poop at Goose River Golf Course, by the time it is filtered down through the entire watershed and gets to where we're testing it by Goodies Beach, it's going to show up at such a small, minuscule versus one taken directly on the beach, probably 20 feet away from where we're going to test.
That's a
Well,
good
and
scientific point.
that would have to be taken during that large rainstorm. What, I think it was a quarter inch or more. It would have to be, the dog would have to be down there during the rainstorm. I don't take my dog out when it's pouring down because I don't like to get wet.
Yeah, but you may take them down right before it rains.
What does your dog do?
We have been tasked with almost the impossible, which is trying to find this pollution source.
Very-
And every little bit that we do is a little step in the right direction. This is a move in the right direction.
Very few beaches allow dogs. It's not common that you have a beach, most public beaches don't allow dogs on them, where they're public beaches for swimming. It's just, being a dog owner, finding a beach that allows a dog is unusual.
So we'll shift them all to late.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Perfect.
Jeff?
I'm thinking Late's gonna close that too.
Jeff, I've got to point out,
Yeah.
you haven't given us a solid reason for why you would need to abstain from this, which means that
Inadequate information is not a solid reason? Okay.
Do you have any
No.
questions that we could answer other than?
Well, I did. I mean, I've asked you. Well, let me ask you again. Do we have any scientific judgment on the watershed? I mean, Owen, yeah, I mean, I would like to see it. So I take your point. Let's vote.
Okay. Since I know
Starting
this,
on that side.
since I know this is gonna be a split vote, I'm gonna call it by name. Casas?
What, can you remind me
The
what I'm
motion
voting?
is to direct the town manager to prohibit dogs at Goodies Beach until November 1st.
Sure. Yes.
Barker?
You cheated. Yes.
McKinley?
Yes.
Chapman, no. It passes 3-1. All right,
Signs be polite, please, Rick.
Oh, yes, no, absolutely.
Thank you.
No,
okay.
we'll do a sign.
Let's
that-
move on to the
that
next tier. We have,
Suggest that they use
have
the
more.
boat
Conservation
launch.
Commission isn't done.
I know, I said, let's move on to the rest here.
Let's show the,
Yeah.
the photo of the pipe, just so we know what we're talking about.
Where's the photo of the pipe?
It's
Okay.
on a tab.
I have no idea where it is.
No,
You get so many things down there.
there.
That's a pipe.
Oh, okay.
So that's the pipe that flows closest to Goodies Beach. This was after a rain at low tide, and what we're asking is to, one, divert the storm water to a domestic sewer, or two, extend the current discharge pipe out to the length allowed, which we think is 80 feet, but that would probably require permits. And treating the stormwater with UV radiation, which was the suggestion of our town engineers. That's a little bit more extensive, creating a pool and treating it before it reaches the harbor.
So to flesh that out a little, those were the very three options in the report. But the way that they were presented is that B and C were kind of test cases. The gold standard would be to spend could be up to $175,000 according to the report, to collect it and treat the stormwater on the spot, and you wouldn't even get all of it. There would be, it would depend how big of a bathtub you could build and shoot the UV rays at it, and detention pond basically with a bell and a whistle. So these other things, B and C, have some merit on their own. They may be as far as the town ever gets, but they also do that thing that everyone has in the corner of their mind, such as extend the pipe out into the harbor. It gives you a test case. If you find that your data gets suddenly much better in the year that you extend the pipe, then you have finally a reason to say, well, that pipe was the problem. It looked bad. We're all satisfied with that. But we had a lot of experts disagree on what possibility, what percentage of the problem might be represented from that outflow pipe. So a first step, and something that we hope we'll be able to provide budget numbers for going into this coming fall and actually start spending money on in fiscal year 18-19 is to extend that pipe. But if we are able to pursue one of these better options, we will, and we'll advise the select board during the next budget season. So is it clear what those B and C are? B is extend the pipe. C is actually divert it, untreated, to Camden. And so these are very unlikely to happen. But the Camden wastewater treatment plant superintendent Dave Bolstrad said he's open to it. He's got capacity. Our engineer said there are very big doubts about getting through the pipe between here and there. And so, again, you would just have to assume that it was a portion of the stormwater and not able to capture it all. So if we did one of those things prior to building a permanent wastewater, stormwater treatment plant with UV, we would have some of this information to help us measure success and predict a good outcome. But if we never got to that more complex thing, the one to try is extending the pipe. And we've all heard different dimensions. How far out can the pipe go? Gartley and Dorsey recommended 500 feet. It's in the executive summary of your report. But at various thresholds, different agencies are involved in the permitting. And so the feasibility that might land on 80 feet, it might land on something else. It's just, there's that possibility we'll get unlucky and all that same pollution will be back on the beach the next day and we won't have learned anything. So it's somewhat experimental, unfortunately.
Okay.
I'm sure we're gonna talk the same way. If we extend the pipe out, the 80 feet, part of that would be we would test where it's coming out to make sure that it is being diluted. I mean, that's one of it. And seeing, because we're not sure, I mean, one of the problems is no one really could tell me how the water works in the harbor. So by extending the pipe, we still would want to test the water above where it ends to make sure that, we are getting as much as we can. Because that pipe, that one solution where we'd be diverting it to the stormwater treatment or sending a pipe out, it's all coming from the single source. And we have,
We have two storm
Bassett.
drain systems in that part of the village, and they all
they
flow
all
down
come
to
down
that
there,
spot.
and it's basically a little stream that runs down. So it'd be easy enough to run it to the pump station, and I know that's what Mike would be able to talk about, where we could actually just put a culvert and run it into the pump station. Or, again, with the pipe, just, Mike could talk probably with better details, because we did this a few years ago, we looked at this, is diverting it out and putting, and again, this would be a temporary thing, probably you want to test for 1 or 2 years to make sure that it is working. It isn't like we're just going to put it out there and say, okay, that's it. We know it's gone.
So, personally, I think the pipe 80 feet out is a good place to start. My question is, do we have data points from that particular place right now? And if we were to do the pipe, say, next year because of budget, we should certainly start to
I can touch on that one, Ted.
have a data point at that point so that we have the baseline to get the delta when it comes up
This year we have funding, and we're ready to start
on the pipe.
designing testing. We're going to improve the testing that the commission does. So we'll have 1 year of baseline, wherever that might be, 80 feet out, 500 feet out. So we're getting help with that, how we're testing. And these other items, just like the big one, and I'll come right back to you, Mike, because I think Mike wants to touch on the infrastructure issue. There's nothing we can ask for the select board to do right now, and we're not prepared with a recommendation on these three options here. Just updating you that the commission will continue this one and the two things below, which is scoping out the actual infrastructure recommendation. I'm telling the commission, be realistic. I think where you're headed is this pipe, but we have a really strong feeling on the commission that Rockport shouldn't settle for the easy things if we haven't really done all we can do to raise and dismiss the tougher ones. Did you want to talk about infrastructure in particular?
Nope.
This pipe, I think we need to figure out how far we can put it out, which there's been from 80 to 500 feet. We need to get it out past 80. I don't know how much further we can go than that, and the price. I think we need to look and get it out as far as we can, maybe 150 feet if possible, to get it out into the harbor so it does dilute. But we need to look at what we can do, what we do need for permitting, and what it's gonna cost us. That's gonna be, and when they do testing, they'll have to start taking into consideration tide, coming, going, wind current, all of that, because if the wind's blowing right on the beach and they test, it's just gonna come back in. So it's gonna help maybe 50% of the time if we extend the pipe. But I think we need to look into that process more and find out what it's gonna cost, and if we can actually get the DEP permitting. I think we can. As far as the infrastructure, I talked to our engineer and his head almost blew right off when I asked him what he wanted to do, but we can talk more about that.
Good summary.
Mr. Chairman, these are items that the commission is going to be working on in the coming year, and it's a report to us. And my comment to the commission would be, some of these things are going to be kind of expensive, or they're going to have a cost attached to them. So it's critical for the commission to finish this work by, I'm going to say, December, so that the budget numbers can be given to the town manager and we can look at the options. If you're still working on this next March, it's another year down the road. Because if there are big budget numbers involved with it, it's got to happen through the budget process so that we have time to think about the options and do that. Otherwise, it won't happen. So I would encourage you to get going on these options and really try to come to a conclusion recommendation by the end of December or so.
The whole thing is that we're not experts here. We need engineers to tell us and to help us, and which takes money, which we don't have. So it's going to take another engineering study to determine whether we put the pipe out how many ever feet, or whether we can divert it to the pump station, which would be our first. We'd rather it go to wastewater than back out into our harbor.
Well, I think, if I'm remembering the engineering report, we were told, first of all, that it's not at all feasible that wastewater could handle that much, and that the existing infrastructure to carry the sewage could get it there. But secondly, we were told that we could spend all this money on either creating a treatment facility right there or the infrastructure to get it to wastewater, spend all the money, and then in the end find that we haven't solved the problem. And until we have some idea that spending this money is going to solve the problem, I'm hesitant to recommend that to the taxpayers.
Well, and if I remember correctly, which sometimes I don't, and maybe Mike, because I feel like we talked about a pump truck or something too, and basically
For a temporary test?
C was a temporary test.
And these
It
are
was
temporary
removing
tests.
it from the pipe, not necessarily an infrastructure improvement, diverting it to Camden's wastewater, but just trying to collect this water and hold it during a heavy weather event, continue to do the testing, and see if you see a decrease in what, and then you can release the water. Maybe Camden takes it temporarily for a couple of months or something, but definitely wasn't necessarily.
Yeah, you know, number one, Camden is never, I mean, without them voting to do it, they are never gonna take our wastewater for stormwater. They're trying to get rid of stormwater out of their system. So for them to allow us to put our stormwater into their system, which is already overburdened with stormwater, that is not, in my estimate, is not gonna happen. So that option really is off the table.
But I do think that what they're talking about, that they got tentative approval, was simply for that testing regime of, collecting some of the water, holding it.
These are,
Right.
these are all temporary, just so that we can try to pinpoint.
Right.
But if you're talking, I would agree with you
they're-
completely on a longer term rerouting our stormwater.
When we
to them.
talked to the woman from DEP, Mike, you were there, and I think Jamie, you were in the room there. I mean, her recommendation, wasn't it to do the pipe, push the pipe out, dilution is the solution? And that was her recommendation. She said, we're spinning our wheels, spending a lot of money, potentially, on solutions that she was saying, put the pipe out into the harbor for that stormwater.
I wish Bob was here, as Marcy said earlier, because I think we've all assumed and have heard that extending the pipe is, relatively inexpensive, but his thoughts were that we may be required to build like a prototype and do some other things that to get the permitting, that could cause that cost to go up pretty significantly. So, again, I think that's why we've maintained the other two options and want to really make sure all the costs for each of the three options have been identified, so that we can make.
So what do you need to identify the cost of the three options?
Well, Marcy said, I think we do need an expert. To really dig in and start understanding what are the permits. We know there are permits needed.
Right.
What are the permits? How much? What is required?
So I think that's part, and an early part of what Ken was alluding to, and if you came back to us even next meeting, if an engineering study was $8,000,
Right.
Then.
We could also use a liaison from the select board. That would be helpful, to talk us through some of this. And having Mike and Abby present has been so valuable at every meeting that they've been present at, because we're not engineers and we're tasked to do these, engineering studies. We can't do them. So we need the help of the board and of the other committees. We all need to work together to figure out what is causing this problem, because we've been in violation since 2014, 2013.
Longer than that.
Yep.
So it's time.
Yep. All right.
So, some of these questions may be able to be answered by Gartley and Dorsey about the pipe when that study was done. I think they looked into some of these, so we may have the answers to some
Yeah, I
of our
think-
questions already.
I mean, maybe we need to relook at the Gartley and Dorsey report, because we've had an engineering report done on this, and we need to determine what needs to be done additionally to
Pass
that.
those puppies out there.
Yeah,
to
we
you.
have them, but these are permanent solutions, and we were talking about temporary to test them, because
Right.
we don't know.
Gartley feels they thoroughly looked into the permitting and the sort of scoping, and
Yeah.
we certainly can afford to design and implement the pipe solution. The issue that some critics have had with the report is that other alternatives have not been explored so thoroughly, because Gartley and Dorsey is so convinced of the practicality of the first solution. So we have some good stuff we're working on. I know that there's plenty of other issues that on the commission's agenda that Kim wanted to get to and that you guys may be interested in. So should I put aside this, and you're going to talk about other commission things?
Oh, can I ask, just before we switch off of that, Abby, could I ask you a favor? Could you maybe speak to number 5, educate boat owners? Not that the commission couldn't, but Abby works there, and I think it would probably fall more on her to educate boat owners and implement campaign to encourage consistent use of onboard septic holding tanks.
So, as far as the education, I mean, we try to educate anyone that comes into the office. We have all the pamphlets from when we had a grant to put in the pump out station in the first place. So they gave us lots of information, and Maine Healthy Beaches gives us lots of information in the form of signage and pamphlets and, use your head, don't pump it out. I mean, use your head, pump it out. Right. Yeah, the other way around. Got it. And they have a campaign that goes through them. So we get materials through them. And we try to outreach as much as we can, sort of almost anecdotally, like, ooh, that looks like someone might be dumping, and it's illegal. You can't dump within 4 miles in West Penobscot Bay. I mean, you can't do it. Camden Conservation Commission is talking about having their harbor master put some dye tablets into the holding tanks. so that you would know if somebody's dumping. That would be that's an interesting idea. It comes along with some legal implications of whether I have the authority to actually do that. But I'm sort of looking into that as well. So it's, we do outreach some, and the Conservation Commission has been great to try to, they're looking at.
I want to add to what we're doing. Next year with the boat registrations, there's going to be pamphlets going out to everyone about our pump station. We're actually also working on the signage, because there's just a little 8.5 by 11 sign, right? Is that the size of it, guys? So we're talking about putting up a bigger sign so that you could see it from more places.
Rockport got added to the main healthy feed.
Yeah, we weren't even on the website saying that we had a pump out station. So we've added
Gonna be one of my
Rockport to that. I mean, we're really trying to get education out there for the number 5. And I don't know that Camden's going to be able to do the dye, but we have talked about it, and that's not going to be our first choice. Our first choice is education, and then if we can't figure out what's polluting our harbor, then maybe the dye comes down the road.
Okay, can we now move ahead?
Yeah.
Supreme Court.
One more item on that is the education, and I think some people have mentioned that they feel it's a lot more of the people who are coming in, not the ones who live in the harbor, but people from away. They'll come overnight, and with their large yachts, and they just figure, oh, what the heck? We want what is it? The ones who are renting. Abby, who does the renting of those certain moorings, the temporary ones? That
Transients?
Rockport Marine. So what we would like to do is design a pamphlet, basically a 1x8, no, 3x8, and whenever someone comes in and wants to rent a mooring for a night or a week, that this is handed to them along with the papers that they have to sign, and telling them about the pump station and where it is. And one of the things we were asking Abby to do is have one of her people, when someone wants to use the pump station, to show them where it is. And so, like I said, between the signs and pamphlets and all the information that we could educate everybody about, it's a first stage.
That's within the commission's purview.
Okay, and that's what we're hoping to do. So that's what we're looking at, and that's what we've been planning, that this will be one of our earlier educational things, to make sure we have something working.
We do have more data. I know you asked specifically, we do have data we can send all of you so that it's a little bit more clear cut. And we do have water sampling set up starting next week throughout the summer that we do ourselves voluntarily. The real cost, I can go down and take samples from that pipe, but testing it for the specific pollutants we're looking for is about $400 for just one test alone. So I think we try to conserve and send in our water samples in batches, and that's really where our expenses are. But we appreciate you listening and understanding why we do water sampling and where we're spending the money for water sampling. Did you have anything else you wanted to add? Thank you.
I have a quick technical question about that, because when I test well water, I have 24 hours to get it to the lab. Is it different for this stuff?
No, we freeze it right on, and then we have to send it overnight to a lab that the EPA or DEP approves of, which we have one in Maryland that works with us now. We don't have one in Maine, unfortunately, at this moment, but.
I talked to one today in the state of Washington that
Yeah,
EPA recommends,
Wash-
shipping.
So then we have to, right. So last winter when I collected samples, or 2 winters ago, and my freezer was full, we waited to send it in the spring. So again, I think we appreciate you listening and understanding.
And we do have funds in this year's budget, which we may ask you next month, last chance, with Megan's help. Can we encumber it based on a specific scope of work for testing? And in next year, to enhance what the commission's doing for testing, and to customize that for a before or after picture on any of the infrastructure solutions. So that's definitely it for the
Thank you.
you know, I had thought there were a million other conscom things that you wanted to cover, but this is all I was prepared on.
Yeah, I think we'll
Okay.
catch it, we'll get you guys with that next time.
Okay.
Wait. Oh.
Here's just my 2 cents on testing.
Yeah.
If there's one of those things, until it becomes unreasonable, you know, we need $20,000 for testing. That's the one thing that I just please fully support, and if there's anything I
The
can
data to prove,
because
yeah.
that would help us so much to set that baseline, to know that we're doing good or not doing good. So of all the things, but I'm supportive of the pipe and the dogs and stuff like that, but at least the testing, I mean, that's got to be a high priority.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
we are testing, and we have been testing for years.
Mm-hmm.
So that won't stop.
It's just, it says enhancing.
Enhance. I think I can be recognized, you know, as citizen scientists.
Yes,
We're all gonna become citizens.
so are you, Bill.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
We can now move to the wastewater commissioners bit and get that out of the way before we come back and handle the other stories.
I move to Exodus Select Board enter as wastewater commissioners.
It's moved and seconded. All in favor? We are
Bless
wastewater
you.
commissioners.
I move to commit the May commitment of sewer user debt fees for the period of March 2017 totaling $101,100.01 to the treasurer for collection, a binary number.
Wow, yeah.
Oh, it
Second.
appears to be.
Moved and seconded. Discussion on this? Do we have any discussion on this?
No, thanks.
Hearing none. All in favor? That is there. Now for the fun one, our wastewater budget.
Well, for discussion purposes, I'll move to approve the fiscal year ending June 30, 2018 wastewater budget.
Second, for discussion purposes.
All right, moved and seconded. Well, what's the discussion?
I mean, we had a pretty good workshop with this last week.
Did you put it all in?
Megan updated everything, and so we're increasing the
What did it go to?
the user debt fee, whatever it's called, the equivalent user fee, I guess, by $1 to help pay for to contribute to the capital improvement plan, and then the other costs are going up a little bit to cover the expenses.
So, Megan, I'm going to describe this horribly, but I'm pretty sure you'll be able to pick up on what I'm saying. The change in that number for the debt service, the number we're more concerned about,
Page 23.
the tweaking of that had to do with long-term projections and putting money aside so when Camden did their thing, we don't get. And I guess I didn't walk away from the last budget meeting that we had feeling that I had fully grasped that because you were tweaking things in real time.
So
What is your feel on that now?
you look at page 21, it's the capital improvement chart itself. The last two lines of that first big red section, we took the 32,000 for the truck out of the actual budget, the expenditures itself. We put it into the capital improvement plan. And then in order to fund the reserve for the following years to make that estimated payment, we're essentially keeping the 32,000 in there and adding 10,000 more to it. And then adding 10,000 to it every year up until fiscal year ending 21. So in order to do that and to continue to fund the plan the way we were, we had to increase our annual deposit from 195,000 to 200,000. And once we increase that annual deposit, it then forces our equivalent user fee to change.
But you're comfortable with what we discussed at the last meeting and what you inserted in there, that we've done as minimal impact for an increase while setting us up good for by the time maybe no one on this board is even here anymore and we have a Camden bond.
Yes.
Good. That was my big concern.
Okay, other discussion? Nope. All right, Then I'll call for the vote. All in favor of adopting the wastewater budget? That is unanimous. The next one is a consideration of the disposition of the unspent portion of the Route 1 sewer extension bond.
You got it there, Bubba?
Okay,
Well, again, for discussion purposes, I'll move to approve the expenditure of $21,500 to complete survey work and to collect ledge data from the $24,569.42 left from the Route 1 work done, parentheses, fresh off the farm, Rockport steel, and apply the remaining balance, $3,069.42 to the next loan payment.
Second.
And this is what we talked about, I believe, at the workshop, was that
Yes.
we had the money there and it was an authorized use of it to do that survey work. And we've had good luck with this in the past where we've worked ahead and had these things in place so that when potential grant money comes down the road, we're in a better position to take advantage of it.
we have a memo from Nate
Any other pages?
regarding this, and his summary of the proposed budget shows 26,500, with 5,000 being to Woodard and Kern, funding support and project development. The aerial survey and photo would be the 21,500. I'm not sure where the other 5,000 is coming from.
Woodard and Curran is funding the other 5,000.
Oh,
That's
Which is to say they're paying themselves?
Essentially, that's what I got from Nate, is Woodard and Curran is covering that $5,000.
okay.
why would they do that?
Because we're good customers? I don't know.
He was in Virginia
say?
when I got all this information from
Maybe
him.
we should send them
so
to Virginia more
our
often.
conversation was kind of short.
That's like this is like what casinos
Well,
do.
I mean, be careful because a couple of these letters from Nate are old.
Yeah, this is from September of 2015.
Oh, that's from 15.
Yeah. So I think that,
Oh.
Right.
those were original estimates and maybe it's changed since then.
He was still he was confident in the $21,500 figure.
Okay. Okay, and this will cover the full remaining length of unsoared Route 1.
Down to South Street.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah,
the
he's
map
got
showing.
the
it,
map shows the
Mm-hmm.
area in red there on the screen.
I was only mildly confused because it had a point source for proposed survey area versus the whole strip, but it's the whole strip from Sea Light Lane to
Yeah,
South
begin
Street.
and end.
In here, it's up on the screen, it's in red.
Oh, there you go.
It's just it's the first step in many
Mm-hmm.
that we'd need to move this forward. But it's basically the same first step as we did when we did the extension up Route 1.
Right.
We did the survey work first,
Mm-hmm.
and then the next was preliminary design, and then the third step was complete design.
And we went on to discuss that as well. And in the email that I have here, Nate's projections would be our next step is to fund the $153,000 for the actual engineering once we have all the survey work done. And while we were planning to do that, even prior to us actually budgeting that amount, we should be doing the work with local businesses and projecting what could come into the area so that we can be ready for any federal grant money that would help us with this extension project. He was very adamant in the fact that that is something that we should be working on now, even though we don't have the survey work done.
If we have the economic development information, it's easier to start tapping into, you know, like the USDA rural development
Right,
funds, so.
right.
Okay,
Last question: has anyone talked with Camden? Oh, this would. The question is only if we were to capture all the waste in here.
we would have to determine which way we want.
And do we have assurances that if this is a route that we're going, that north and south of us, they're able to take our waste? Because it would just seem to be such a shame
They've
to
already
install.
said that we could.
Yeah, we.
At least
Okay.
going north to Camden, they have the
I think,
capacity.
if I recall, Rockland had a lot of capacity
Yeah.
Yeah,
too.
they have,
And that would be part of Nate's engineering study
Mm-hmm.
when he builds the system, is to make sure that,
And that section, from what I
Wherever.
remember from Nate's conversation, that section could be reversible.
right.
Yeah.
They couldn't reverse the whole system, but that one section could be sent
we
either
build it
north or
right.
south, depending on how it was put together.
And that's talking about the double tubes laid, so that it
Mm-hmm.
goes down and then gets shot back up, yeah.
Yeah, well, a lot of it is gonna
Under
be that
pressure.
way anyway. You gotta, it's gravity feed to a spot that then feeds it back in one direction or the other. I think the only issue would be is if we wanna send it to Rockland, cause we have an agreement with them now for maximum gallonage that we can ship, and we're getting close at times to that, as I recall.
Yeah, we'd have to renegotiate with them.
Right, I think we're nearing the end of that.
But physically,
well,
I
we're-
think they said they had the capacity.
Yes.
But obviously, the agreement would need to be renegotiated.
Are there expiration dates on engineering studies and things like this? As far as if we
There-
get too far in front of our skis
Oh,
in-
the cost
Well, the cost
aspects
could
of it.
change.
Cost could change, but the physical.
No, I
what
just
they-
mean, what we're doing, this money at no point in time could go to waste if it happened to take us 10 years to get this thing built.
No, because
The
the
rocks aren't
ledge
gonna
isn't gonna
move.
change.
You can
ledge
put it,
isn't
you
gonna
can put it on
move.
the shelf and you can save it unless
May get a couple new businesses in there, or from a single dwelling to
the
a.
state comes in and
you know.
moves the road or something, which is unlikely.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have further discussion, or can we go for the vote? All in favor of the motion? All right, thank you. We can now exit as the wastewater commissioners.
So move.
Second?
All in favor? Now we go to the northern, I corrected that typo.
It's corrected in one place, but not another.
The Northern Borders Regional Commission grant application for the funding of a study for expansion of the town-owned FTTP network.
Okay, where the hell's that?
I know I changed that. Yes,
your time,
I did.
buddy.
See it right there.
And it's not even midnight yet, John. Yes. Oh, Jamie.
Close.
Looked
right.
like he missed a
Sprawled
flight.
out
in the back. Pardon that antiquated
pillow.
phrase, by the way. I'm going to refer forevermore to just expansion of the broadband network and not fiber to the premise, which is what that stands for. This is a proposal for a commitment on the part of the select board to look for matching funds. But we are told by Bill Napower, who will help us with this grant, that when we get the award, it will be close enough to budget season again so that you'll know whether or not you have an award before you go about actually raising and appropriating matching funds. And of course, it's possible that they would come from another source like a donation. In any event, this is a proposal to apply for a grant to the Northern Border Regional Commission for help with designing and business modeling and planning for expansion of the town's broadband network. And this is a much more modest proposal than one you saw a year ago. The cost estimate provided by the tech committee, and John's here to follow up on that, is $55,000. The minimum matching funds is 50%. So the request would be for $22,500, and the matching funds would be $22,500 if and when the time comes.
And that expenditure would be made when?
We think not until the following fiscal year,
Okay.
18-19, and it's just that's just a quirk of the program, that's the sort of lag times they've been running with and that they've been comfortable with. This is an unusual creature. The Northern Border Regional Commission is a recent act of Congress, literally, for the several states that are up here in the Northeast, and they're shifting around what counties are involved and how much support there is. But right now, it's available to us. And as I was telling John, one of the reasons that I've zeroed in on this for a fiber optic project is that the main Connect Me funds have been telling us, that we don't make the cut in terms of rural and underserved, and there's a lot of politics behind that. The town planners, when asked to testify on that, said, well, we'd much rather see that money go into downtowns where people already have some service and they want better. But that's just one of the reasons why This source of funds seems ideal for a kind of experimental and a small dollar amount, whereas those other things you mentioned them just a minute ago, USDA and other sources of funds, we plan to focus on sewer improvements with those other big programs. So John is here and knows better than I how the tech committee went about putting this cost estimate together with Finley Engineering.
Okay.
Good morning.
Morning.
So the tech committee's been busy. We've been spending the last almost a year doing a lot of due diligence. And what you're seeing now is basically the way we see to go through and move ahead. What this grant will do, if we can get the funding, it'll inform us as far as what is the best model that we need for our town. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of conversation. This study will tell us what it'll cost within 10% plus or minus, pretty much guaranteed. It'll show us a best financing plan. It'll identify the risks, go through what will happen if this doesn't happen, what can we do about it. It will be a roadmap for going forward. And it will give us what they call a banker-ready document. So this is so much detail that, you know, a bank would approve a loan on it, basically. And it gives funding options on bonds, grants, federal loans, public-private partnerships, walks us through all of that. As Jamie said, this is the second time we've applied for a grant. The probability that we would be able to secure a grant here, Jamie, what would you give it?
Relatively high.
Relatively high.
And I think that because the town did show a lot of readiness to proceed by getting where we got to with the Tilson report. In some ways, that was kind of an uneven thing where it got a lot of detail in some areas and we're filling in blanks in others. But that makes us highly competitive. That type of information is a big step ahead of where other towns in the region are in making similar requests. So we're looking to do actual business modeling. I think it's attractive. And of course, we've talked about why other sources of funds are not so well suited. So,
and we'd be with this, if we get this grant, we'll be able to, for 50 cents on the dollar, retain a firm that is by far and away the best in the country, I think. They have over 63 years of being in the business. They've advised over 150 plus municipal clients throughout that time. They've helped build over 1 million miles of fiber and broadband networks in the United States. I mean, I can't come up with any reason that anyone would object to going forward here. This is a great value. It's exactly what we need to really clarify some of the issues that were flushed out. Oh, there I go with dog jokes again.
Yeah.
Sewer, sorry.
Help
it's late.
yourself.
Yeah. And we don't have much time. We've got to apply by June 2nd. That's the deadline.
So let me jump in here for a quick second because I was at the meeting when they teleconferenced these guys in, and for every single question that the committee had, they had 3 answers immediately. They really, really know their stuff. And what they pointed out with no acrimony was that the services that we got on our prior engineering survey, what have you, were A, a little dated, B, came from us only knowing about a limited market of service providers in this realm, and that they have experience in thinking way outside the box. And the technology committee is a lot like the laudits that our comp plan got 20 years ago, because nobody in the state of Maine did a comp plan as well as we did and didn't hire outside services. Rockport has all of these people that have incredible influences. So Deb and John and all these other people were able to pull in contacts. So the fact that they're, in Minnesota, or the fact that they're all that stuff, these guys absolutely know their stuff.
Okay.
And it's actually quite exciting to entertain this notion.
Has Finley done any work in the Northeast? Because I do look at the map and see that it looks like they're concentrated in the Midwest.
I don't know all the places they've, I mean, Northeast, I know they've got clients in Virginia. They've, they're a national firm, and they've got certainly concentration in certain areas. I'm not sure what's unique about the Northeast that's, you know, I mean, we have our own different culture maybe and history, but, you know, fiber is the same in the Southeast as it is in the Northeast, I think.
I think actually one of the guys that we were speaking to on the phone from this firm had personal experience with doing something in Maine, and I don't recall what it was, but
Yeah, was that,
that was a different arm?
I don't know. There's actually two firms here, one that are
there was
coming
another
together. One is Finley, one is CCG Consulting. CCG Consulting is based out of Florida. I'm not sure what city he's in. I'm trying to remember what you're remembering, Jeff, and I'm coming up blank because it's that time of night.
You would think we'd heard, but anyway, we're fairly confident that the fact that we're outside of there.
I don't see
I just asked the question just because,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes people go to a different part of the country in some businesses and find that things are different.
No, and I picked up on that too. In the ones that are highlighted are their permanent office locations. And it appeared, however, we manage, consult, and engineer projects throughout those are their permanent offices. I think if the market was here, the question that I had, and it's just curiosity, on page 8 of this, it says our deliverables, and the first deliverable, and if I'm confused, please, because I haven't spent a huge amount of time with this.
I got it, Jamie.
It says that they'll prepare a base financial model showing the city as the ISP, the internet service provider. The purpose for this model is to understand the overall profitability potential for the market. If this model doesn't work well, then partnership models can't work well. And then when you get to the second deliverable, it says we will then use that model. So the question is for you, Mr. Veman, if they do that first portion of the deliverables and find out that we're not a potentially profitable market, will they stop there and return unspent funds to us because they've determined there's no point to move forward? Because it appears as though the deliverables are, the 55,000 will give us all these deliverables, but if they get to step 1 and they can't prove out the model, do we get money back?
Well, that kind of question never occurred to me, to be quite honest, because I think the way they approach it is that they're going to give you a model that works. I mean, there's so many different ways to come at this that I guess I just can't conceive of a way that we couldn't make our way through it.
And I don't doubt you in the slightest. It's just the oddity of reading it that they're saying we're going to do this model, and if this model doesn't work, then you can't do partnerships because they won't work, but we're going to use that model to do everything else off of it.
I think that's just bad language on
Yeah,
their part.
let's back up a little bit, because this is also, I mean, there's 12 pages of stuff that they didn't write exclusively for us.
Well, the document's 22 pages long.
Yeah.
Right.
So
That's why I said I haven't spent a huge
So
amount of time.
we're on one end of the spectrum in that we are willing to entertain the idea of the town financing the whole thing. And what they're saying is that they can come up with partnerships because they have all this experience of, have you ever thought about leveraging this, and this company? So at the worst, under what you're saying there, that there is no private-public partnership, that doesn't faze us.
Well, also on the same page, they make a statement that says, our philosophy is that our work is never complete until the client is satisfied. So, I mean, I think they're gonna keep working it,
Yeah.
is my point.
And
I don't-
not bill us and not ask for any more money until we're satisfied?
Until we're satisfied. That's what it says. That's what it says.
So
You're not signing on to that at this point. All you're doing is signing on to us applying
The
for the grant.
application, yeah.
That's
we're-
right.
we're
This
not
cost
committing to
estimate
anything.
is to illustrate a grant, and we're all very sensitive to the town's first try at public participation in this arena. And I would read this proposal as being sensitive to that. The assumption is not necessarily a town-wide network at all. The assumption here is that somebody's going to work with us until they find a geographic extent, even if it's like an octopus that just kind of goes a little over there and a little over there, and will be profitable, or will pay for, will finance itself at some point. And so that modeling is going to be customized to us and isn't necessarily about townwide or any other preordained result.
Yeah, preordained business model is what I think Jamie means to say. So, there's a lot of latitude here, and their job is to keep going until they find one that'll fit, and we'll all agree to, or most of us will, majority of us will.
And what we're asking for is permission for me to apply for the grant.
That's all at this
Yep.
point.
At
Yeah,
this
we can be
point-
awarded the grant and then reject it too, if we
You
don't wanna
could.
spend the money, that would be a silly
That
thing
is
to
an
do,
action
but.
item, so that, Rick can say that at this meeting, the select board did authorize him and that.
Well, I will move to authorize the town manager to sign an application to the Northern Border Regional Commission for funding assistance to pursue a network feasibility study, as described in the attached proposal submitted by Finley Engineering and CCG Consulting, dated January 17th, 2017.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Do we have further discussion? No? Then I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Thank you, John.
Don't rush off, John.
Yeah. Go get your cup of coffee.
Oh, there's so much more.
Actually,
My time is worth
You have your jacket in the back
Three Dog
there.
Cafe
Oh,
opens in
that's
just a
right
few
there.
more hours.
already done
Don't
G.
choke.
We've already done G. Our next one, the emergency action plan.
Mr. Chairman, I move to table this item until the next meeting.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Your reason?
In reading it, I found several errors, needs to be cleaned up a little bit. And so rather than try to go through and correct those errors in this setting, we can go through and
Thank you,
flesh them
John.
out and then present it, corrected at a later time.
Okay, that would be our June 26th meeting.
Yeah.
All right, the motion is to table. All in favor? It has been tabled. And now we go down to looking forward to our next year. And I thought I had included, oh, that's right, it's in your memo. I went through and I started to realize we're doing 2 meetings a month, but they're both on Mondays. And we already get complaints that people can't make it at this hour. I'm assuming that we get complaints of people saying that we can't always make a Monday. However, looking at the calendar and availabilities, Tuesday would be the best day, but that's a hardship on Ken. And, well, you
Sleep
said.
more than 3 hours?
It's my wife's day
Yeah,
off.
his wife's that, So, the alternative might be, picking a Wednesday,
But,
like
you
the
know,
fourth Wednesday, but
yeah.
that's Midco Solid Waste.
Right, it gets
meeting.
into a lot of other things. I think
Yeah.
Monday seems to be the time to do it. I mean, I have no strong opinion one way or the other, but Wednesday you're gonna start to duel with
I
the
think if you start.
planning board. and
Well,
so
the
on.
library wants to use this too, more.
Right, so,
Yeah, we've got the Mondays scoped out, I think.
Okay.
And we don't know necessarily that, I mean, we've had 2 meetings a month for the last, handful of months. That could potentially change. We may be able to go back to 1 meeting a month at times. I don't know. We'll have to see what the year brings.
Well, this is our second meeting this month, and we're already after 10 o'clock.
oh, yeah.
Of course, we had the auditors and
We also don't have
commission.
another meeting until June
June.
26th, so
Yep.
so stuff got put on there.
Mm-hmm. So we stay with the 2 Mondays. Okay,
I think for now, I mean, the new board can,
yeah, oh, yeah. The organizational meeting can set what day you want, and the town charter just says we have to have at least 1.
Yep.
Doesn't say what day it has to be. You could go to the first and third or something, something like that. So, I then put out the schedule, and I gave you a calendar for next year, and it shows these dates on there. But I think most of these work well based on what we see. Though tonight, we're talking that maybe the Conservation Commission needs to be in December.
or January at the latest.
Or
I think.
January at the latest. And we could flip the cemetery and conservation commissions from January and February.
And I'm not sure where that list is, but the harbor committee.
Roll up.
Roll up. Ding, 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 ding.
What? You went too far. Slow it a little further down. Keep going, keep going. keep going, keep
Nobody knows what
going,
he's talking
keep
about 'cause
going.
it's not switched in.
Yeah, keep going. A little bit further, right there, you're starting it.
Starting at blue, blah.
See
Har-
there,
Harbor
item
Committee.
I.
Oh, those are my yellow marks, 'cause I emailed this to them. That's why it's there. Okay, so Harbor Committee in December seems a little counterproductive because they've sort of wrapped up their stuff and,
Yep.
and start again in March.
Mhm.
I could have that wrong with Sam's Energy and what have you, but we might want to put them, later in the year, like March.
You want them at the beginning of their season or the end of their season?
Yeah, aren't they gonna come in with proposals for change of a fee schedule?
They will, but they do such a good job of making it make sense that it'll be a okay vote, right?
Okay.
As you please. It's just, you can go with a September or November, switch them around with somebody you want later.
Well, that's up to you.
It depends whether we want to give them guidance or they want to give us guidance.
Yeah. Because we could, I could easily shuffle them into March. I was trying to move these earlier, but March isn't bad.
Let's keep it the way it is, and I'll talk with the chair, and we'll see what he
Okay.
thinks is best.
All right. I did want to point out that I'm assuming that we would have a second select board meeting in December. Typically, Rick heads out of town right after holiday on the harbor. And this would be while he is out of town, both the Harbor Committee and the Opera House Committee. I stuck with the idea that we want these committees to present on our second meeting in the month. And I tried to get most of these loaded before budget season really gets going.
You're gonna have, I would suspect you're gonna, December 18th, you may have, it may not be an easy time to get people to come to a meeting. And it's just a few days before Christmas.
It's a full week, Rick.
It's a week before Christmas.
I'm just saying.
That's a few days.
Hey,
Well, I think.
I don't start my shopping until the day before Christmas.
Why I didn't get a present this year.
No, that wasn't the reason, Ken.
You didn't, that coal in your stocking, that was from him.
I'm just saying, that's.
My 2 cents on the Rick factor. Rick gets paid to do this stuff. He can liaison with Harbor Committee and Opera House. I wouldn't necessarily. I think it's more for our edification
Yes.
than for his.
Yes.
Right, no, I don't have to be there. I'm just saying that you,
Yeah.
you have,
We have had meetings without Rick.
right,
And we survive.
and you
somehow.
survived
Yeah.
quite nicely.
My only thing is, and I think I know the answer to this. We don't have the Capital Improvements Committee on there
Because if
because
you scroll down just a little bit, I've got a workshop set up for them on, tentatively on January 4th.
That's not enough. Visiting text, no.
Yeah, no, you
No,
got it.
you-
It's right there, right there in the middle of the page.
Proposed schedule for workshop.
gotta get new glasses, bud.
Yep. Can't afford them, I went down.
And I put in 2 ORC workshops. One early in July for an abbreviated summer schedule. And then the second,
On the marijuana vote, that may depend on the marijuana
Yeah.
vote.
that may be, we may not have anything that we need to do during, before November. But
Marijuana is probably the
there
only
may be
thing.
other issues that we might want to deal with.
Yellow.
I put in the tax increment financing workshop for August 3rd. And ad hoc water quality, either, and this is gonna depend on how they feel that we need to do it, either as a workshop, and that would be October 30th, or they could come to us during our regular select board meeting. And again, that's based on how much they want to tell us or need to tell us. So, I'm just, bringing this to your knowledge so that you can muddle over it, because whoever's on the select board come June 14th is gonna have to start really dealing with these. Of course, you know, the new select board may change their mind and don't wanna hear from any other committees.
Ken, I know Ken will be here, and he's more with it than I am.
I don't know about that.
So, anything else? You know, do you need, you wanna ask any other questions about what this is? Okay, so Jeff, you'll check with the Harbor Committee?
Yep.
You
right
also
now.
wanna check with the Opera House Committee?
Yeah, they could appear almost any time.
Okay.
I mean, they do work constantly, so. Not that Harbor Committee doesn't, but they have no real season to their.
Yeah. So, okay. We'll go with that. And we've done wastewater commissioners. We're down to liaison reports.
I'm gonna plead the fifth like Rick did and say, we're doing liaison reports this meeting?
Well, I'll give you a quick one on the marijuana. So, one thing that's been interesting for me is that getting lobbyists are easy. Getting legislators are hard. So I have one fully committed, and I've got others that are interested. They're just working on it. One thing that was interesting was that a person who I've grown quite close with, who I thought would be like my go-to, hey, you know, we've been working together so well, you're just gonna come. When I talked with him, and he's on the marijuana committee, so I said, I really want you there. And he said, I don't want to go. And I said, really, why? And he said,
I want the precedence.
no, he's not uber impressed with the marijuana committee. And so by his vocalizing to me, I'm pretty confused about where exactly we stand. And so standing in front of a group of people to tell them what the marijuana committee's been working on, when in his judgment, he as a committee member is not super understanding of what they've even done to this point.
Understanding or an agreement?
Both. He thinks that there's a little bit of possibly some lack of leadership and people that have taken off or bitten off more than they can chew with responsibilities, and maybe a little bit of walking around in circles when they meet. And there's a lot of discussion and debate, but as far as we the committee know that we're going to tax you at this percent because we've already taken care of that and voted it out, and this is what's going to be allowed and this is what's not, he said he would almost feel a little embarrassed to come because he wouldn't be able to answer as many questions as he would hope in his own mind
Right.
assessment.
But
that's not to say that I can't get other folks that can answer. Like I said, I have one that's happy to come. He'll answer some questions, and I'm going to work on other lawmakers too, which is why we advertise it as just legislators. But I just thought that that was interesting. My go-to person didn't want to, not because he didn't think he would have the time, but because he's so confused about what the committee's been working on.
Maybe
Which
all,
doesn't
the more,
necessarily-
maybe all the more reason for him to come and listen.
Right. Well, listen and/or respond to questions. I mean, my two reactions to that are, one, it's the only committee we got, right? Good, bad, or indifferent. And if he wants to expose the weak underbelly of its inaction or inability,
Kind of what I was thinking
That's
too.
fine.
He said that he would continue to think on it, and I will come across him tomorrow, and I'll discuss further with him.
Make sure that he knows too that it's a multi-town event.
And I told him it's just people asking general questions, looking for general answers to get a feel for where the state's at and what, in theory, could be coming down the pike. But I'll continue to work on some folks. There were a couple that said no, but there are definitely still some other opportunities out there. And then what I may try to do too is liaison with additional folks on that committee as time permits, and then just offer myself as a person that can answer whatever questions I could possibly answer.
unaccustomed as you are with public speaking.
Yes, I clam up.
No, we recognize that.
It's the
Any-
public shutting up, not the public speaking.
Any other your committees that you
I continued to go and sign the warrants for the solid waste. Here's a brief solid waste update. Is a portion of this kind of a waste watch update, but they've really honed in on the swap shop and trying to maximize the swap shop. This last weekend they had kind of a work bee there. We finally loaded all the kids up in a bunch of tools, only to get an email that said everything was completed. So Waste Watch is a phenomenal subcommittee or whatever they are, recommendation committee for the Solid Waste Corporation. And I'll end there.
Well, we do have the solid waste board meeting this Wednesday. And there are things to be discussed, amazing. We thought originally we were gonna skip the month, but we didn't.
A new chairman.
Yeah, well, we decided to hold off on electing a new chair because the July meeting is the annual meeting, and that's when we elect the members, chair, vice chair, secretary, treasurer, and have that done then. So we said the vice chair, who is to take over in the absence of the chair, can sit for 2 months and just go with that rather than having another one. Because terms do expire every 3 years. Mine expires, and somebody else may be on there, and so let's go with that.
My question for this board, or possibly just the two gentlemen down there, the issue that we're having with the Town of Hope and the monies we'll be getting from the PERC agreement, do you all have an opinion on that? I have my own personal opinions on it, and I'm happy to expand on what the issue is. I think we talked about it last time. But as it relates to Bill and I being there and speaking for our board, do you all have strong feelings one way or the other about Hope being the one municipality of the four that will retain not one but both of the payments that we would get? One relatively insignificant, but it's still money. The other quite larger, still money. And just to refresh your memory, the thing that I don't necessarily have issues with them holding on to it, except of my thought process of, as we continue to pool this money, we'll be smart about it, hopefully reinvest it in more of a, profit yielding fund, and we can use some of that once we've got the money for the closure fund. Everything we get for interest can go towards operations and maintenance, but every time we shell out from that interest, we're gonna have to look at Hope and go, we would have made more money if your money was here. So you gotta come up with, it's just gonna be a wicked pain.
I would urge you as one of our representatives to do all you can to bring them back into a place where they're being reasonable. I mean, it's a
voting. That's going to be the big thing. They're going to want a stronger voting. And again, this is another question for the board. I have my own.
They're using it as a leverage.
As a bit of a, they may not admit to it, but that's my feel anyway.
Because I think the long and the short of it is, if we pool that money and then we use that money for improvements at the transfer station, whatever they might be, when the bill for those improvements comes due, it seems to me that there's going to be a bill for that, and Camden, Rockport, and Lincolnville's bill will be paid out of the fund, and then Hope's going to get an extra bill. I mean, and I don't know, that's something you may have to look into. Does the interlocal agreement allow for that? And if it doesn't, then you may have to take steps to amend it to make it allow for it or whatever. But I mean,
well, the interlocal agreement also specifies how the vote will be apportioned.
Right.
So that's going to have to be changed anyway if.
And do you have strong
we
feelings
go to
about that? And you can see the breakdown in something that we had earlier.
Are they thinking of going as far as leaving the organization?
No.
I don't think they would be. That would be quite silly.
We've been through that before, and they realize that if they do, they're going to have to pony up a lot of money anyway
They're gonna
every
have to
year
build their own.
because that closure, they've got to pay for that closure cost, and they've got to pay the ongoing costs once it's closed. We went through this 4 or 5 years or 6 years ago when they said, we're pulling out because it's too expensive. Well, I'm sorry.
Well, I guess the only thing I would say is, you know, you have to try to prevail upon their better nature or whatever, but you know, but then at some point, if they hold fast in the sand, then when we do improvements, there's gonna have to be some way to bill them separately for that.
Or all the towns are gonna have to hold their money out and do whatever they want to do it and.
Do it that way, I mean,
Pay
we-
for it.
Puts
Because
the closer
we're
fund
using.
off that much further.
Well,
You know,
or we use it for the redesign of, it's gotta be one of the, it's gotta be a specific point.
Right.
But in that letter that they sent, they implied they didn't trust the board to hold true with what they would be using that money for.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but from a standpoint of influence and of votes equaling influence, both Hope and Lincolnville have been way more influential than their size and voting ability would indicate. I mean, we had Lincolnville. Remind me if I'm wrong, but
Past two chairs of the board have been from those two towns.
right, and they've been very influential, and they've held up things that we certainly felt differently, and we got not bamboozled, but everything came to a dead stop until they got their way. So I'm not sure whether that they're feeling underrepresented because they're hugely powerful from a personality and insistence point of view.
I
and all
tried
that.
arguing that point and saying I feel like you're diminishing your
Yeah, the
presence at this table.
The number of times in the past 4 years that we've gone to that weighted vote, had to use that weighted vote, have been like one or two, maybe?
At most.
At most. It's really, the weighted vote has had little impact. It's only been a couple of times where it was even considered, even in the discussion. Like Jeff said, the discussions and the votes, all of that discussion has been really very equally divided.
The big issue
amongst the
that
board
we
members.
had came down to the fact that all four towns had to vote in public.
Right.
The public had to vote for the Eco Maine contract. So each town had an equal say.
Yeah, because they had basically rights of veto.
Yeah, if
Well,
they-
and there's another
exactly.
possibility in terms of the financial structure. Perhaps you could talk about the possibility of, for any infrastructure projects for which that money would be spent, requiring all four towns to agree, rather than just the weighted vote. I mean, could you write that into your bylaws? And maybe that would allow them to feel a little bit more comfortable about, well, we think this
Things
is
in the
a-
bylaws, but it has to do with years and length of contracts, anything
Well,
over 3 years.
Anything
or-
over 3 years has to go back to the vote of the citizens of the town.
So they already have that.
So they already have that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think that
The
touches
original proposal
finances.
was to take that money and put it into the closure fund.
Right.
That would bring it up to the level that we need, and that could then cap everybody else. Now, the thing is, they're putting in, Hope is putting in like 9 or 10% of that money. The rest of it's being borne mainly by Camden and Rockport, and then about 14 or 15 by Lincolnville.
Let me ask you a question. And we may not have any clue of the answer to this, but do we have a sense of whether this is coming from the people of Hope or just the particular personalities on the board? So,
To the point where the chairman of the Hope Select Board, who is not on the board of directors, came to our meeting to be
Apologize?
more, to be more clear about the letter. He wanted to, they sent a letter and then they showed up and said, here's our position
oh, so their position is unified
on their
on
board.
their select
On
board?
the select board? Okay.
Yeah, because they don't,
It was written,
but Tom Ford was not on their select board, and their other guy, though, is, isn't he?
Is.
Yeah, but he's only one of.
Kern.
Kern, yeah.
Yeah.
But they're a 3-member board, aren't they? Are they a 5-member board?
I think they're three.
I think they're 3. So,
Uh,
the two that
makes
weren't
it almost
on,
an even more interesting dynamic.
Yeah.
because Kernan said he was in favor.
Kern-
The month before
He had
we went
initially
back.
displayed
Yeah.
some reservations about it.
Right.
But when we, as the four towns, were talking about the importance of pooling this and everyone pooling their resources, he kind of got on board, but then went back to his board
and then the letter came, and then Kern was pretty unified behind his chair.
And one of the things was, as Bill mentioned, is the goal was to focus on what we know is the closure fund. We know the closure is coming, and we know it's gonna be a big amount of money. So would be to take that money and earmark it directly for something that we know that everybody agrees on, we're all committed to that, and put that money there. And then by doing that, it frees up other money that we're putting into that account in the future to then vote on and discuss and move those things forward as a group on those things individually. And it just seemed like the easier approach is to just take all the money, earmark it for the closure, and then all these other things we can continue to have conversations about. But I don't know where that came from. It was like a curveball.
And I gotta say, the most frustrating thing for me, and I can only imagine for everyone sitting there who's basically part of a municipal government, everything you can tell me that you need this money for, I can say the exact same thing. Camden can say it, Lincoln, we can all have the exact same rationale for keeping that money, but we choose not to. You all just somehow, this 10 grand was so dang important, and they kept saying, you know, we're giving up 100% control of our money with only retaining 10% voting rights on what to do with it afterwards. So that's why I really did feel that the majority, it was a bit of leveraging to try to whet the appetite for equal and even voting rights.
Is their board gonna turn over? I have no idea
I
who's
think they
running it,
have
who's
one,
not.
one person's up every year.
But it doesn't really matter because their liaison, well, maybe because it's a board decision, but their liaison just got approved. Or their
Manager influencing events at all?
She's brand new.
She's brand new, Samantha.
Samantha Mank.
Yeah, and it's.
I don't know, ask the executive guy.
Kern was on board. You know, that kind of came out of left field. You know, I mean, it was a very well done letter. He did it. You know, it was
Very thorough.
Yeah, very thorough letter. But I don't know what
Well, I mean, we're not the most sane bunch of people either, but but still, I would urge you to have them see the wisdom of status quo or some minor variation thereof. I mean, it doesn't. I'm not clear as to what they want.
They want even voting rights.
But I mean, they want to have a quarter of the vote.
Split between two people, but yeah. Mm-hmm. Which would give them, they would give up 100% control of their money, but retain the exact same amount of voting rights on what to do with that money, even though they gave us way less than we put in.
Right.
And so it's been something that bubbles up every once in a while, this voting stuff, more obviously a lot more recently because of the Fiber Right Eco-Maine thing. I don't know.
Well, there was some misinformation put out about that too, because there were some people out there claiming that Camden had over 50% of the vote, and they don't.
No, they don't.
Yeah, about 40.
But, I mean, in a bigger, broader context, I think that it's silly to be a member of something and not have full voting rights. At the same time, that's clearly how it was all spelled out when we went into this agreement.
They do have full voting rights. It's a group of this many people of the serves the population of this, and they have full voting rights.
And so it's just odd because
Well, you can do. I
it's
mean,
set up
yeah,
that way.
other multi-town boards like that, you would have proportional representation on the board. You know, Camden would have 8 members, and Hope would have 2, and Rockport would have 6, or something like this.
Yeah.
The same way. That's just the way those things are. It's, you know.
So am I taking that as that you don't want us to support a change? That was the second part of my question. What do you all feel on the voting breakout?
I think that I don't support a change in that. No, I mean,
I could support a change to equal representation, each town getting 2 votes, provided that that's how the costs get allocated too.
Well, yeah.
You know, they take 25% of the costs, I'm fine with it.
I hear
They have
red balloons.
25% of the vote.
For a
But so
second
long as
there, I'm
my
thinking,
town
what?
is putting out 32% of the cost, we need 32% of the vote.
This is the beginning of the end.
You know, well,
Yeah.
that's the way it was
I
argued
hope
back
you're
in
wrong.
1990 or whatever that interlocal was signed.
So, if they want to say, there's no other place in the world where this happens, you can remind them that Rockport's share of Region 8 is hugely more than the amount of students we send there. And it was an agreement cut, 25 years ago, and we had,
But that's a CSD, and they
That's a
have
CSD, but it's
share
a
of the CSD
municipal
as well.
style
These things occur
agreement.
in government
Yeah, yeah.
cooperation
It's just,
like that.
that's what
the
happens.
way
So
it
you
works.
want me to go back, find the original founding members of the board of directors, and then I can say, Hope, if you want people to blame, these are the people you can
That's not
blame.
something
Their
else.
names are on the interlocal agreement.
It's fair. I mean, that's the bottom
Yeah.
line, is it's fair for the, I mean, they're using a certain percentage of the facility based on their population. They have that same certain percentage of representation on the board as far as the vote is concerned, and they have that allocation of expenses. I mean, that's,
So this
is
is how-
it any more fair for them to then have more power over allocating our money when we have to pay that much more money? It doesn't
button
make any
this
sense.
conversation up this way. Prior to us making any decision on voting stuff, I will bring whatever information comes out of our discussions about it for your all's consideration before I cast a vote one way or the other.
Well, all we would be doing is casting a vote to take it to our citizens.
Right,
Because it's a signed interlocal agreement that was
Oh.
voted on by the
changed, yeah.
citizens to
Oh.
accept it.
Right.
And that's how they got it through that way, is to convince the people that you're gonna have equal representative. One person gets the same share regardless of which town
So
you're in.
here's the thing that you can do when you go back to the Midco Solid Waste Board, is you can ask Hope to do a preliminary, if that question, because it does change the entire interlocal agreement, if that question has to go to all 4 towns' voters, have it go to Hope's voters first as an indication of whether the select board is anywhere near reality. And that, rather than, going to the Hope voters and shaming them into, knocking on the select board's noggin, you just say, fine, take it to your place a year before it comes to ours and see what your people think. And then we educate the citizens of Hope.
Well, we've
but if
already
I'm a
got it
Hope-
on our warrant this June to approve spending that put option.
Yep.
And putting the money to Midco Solid Waste.
Well, we go ahead and do what the right, we go ahead and vote on what the right
Yep.
thing to do is. But I'll let Rick speak, and then if I think he says what he's gonna say, I'll counter it.
Yeah, if I were a Hope voter and you came to me and said, do you want to have equal voting rights? But we're not, it's
And
only
not have to pony up any more money to
I'm
get
gonna
it.
say, sure.
Yeah, but the
But
thing-
I think that the majority of people in Hope will see through that, and they'll say, look, all of our other agreements, I mean, when we have an agreement educationally,
Only if you're there at town meeting to explain it to
I'm
them.
not the one to. But, I mean, it's the fair thing to do, and I'm guessing, but you guys know the personalities, you're at the meetings, but I'm guessing that the select board is going in a direction that the bulk of its citizens might not.
How does the CSD board vote?
It's essentially proportional by virtue of numbers.
Right, there's more people.
So there's just more people.
More people from
Yeah,
Camden.
and that's also why,
Rockport.
there's 19, 21 people around the,
Yeah.
around the table. It's a little unwieldy, but,
But that's how they proportion out.
Yeah.
Right, so they have more
So
representation.
each person gets a vote, each person's vote on the board, but there's not as many of them from Hope.
Yeah.
Well, we'll bring this to the board on Wednesday.
Yep, so. Parks Committee met on the 10th. They did get the plantings for the Pascal Avenue Island and the agreement with, Hoboken Farley, to water it for the same amount that they did last year.
and I noticed the garden club was up working on this building.
Yes, they've been doing this, and, down in the harbor as well, they're gonna be working down there. The Garden Club and the Parks Committee are working together on trying to figure out how they want to see the plantings around Andre. They are very set on, we need to get that pedestal out of there.
The pedestal's not going in.
I know, I keep
I
telling
looked at
them
it
that
the other day and I
pedestal's
was like,
staying.
that's
Everything
not
runs
going
off of that
anywhere.
pedestal. but that the truck will eventually
truck
get
will
moved once we can get power over to the other side near the engines.
We'll put a big fake plastic wishing well on top of it or something.
I suggested something
Garlic
like that, just a little dog, what we could do is put a little dog house over it.
So when my wife kicks
I,
me
I
out-
was going with teak or mahogany, but you guys can have the plastic.
Nobody noticed it until until the Parks Committee recommended taking the planting,
Yeah, the Mugo pines.
pines out of there, and then everybody suddenly noticed the.
Yeah. And the library committee meets on the 30th. Those are mine.
ORC is done for the season. Ambulance review will finally meet, coming up here June
Yeah.
1st or 2nd or something like that.
Put that on my calendar someplace.
Legacy Rockport, I spaced and missed their meeting, but I did talk to the chair, and they are taking on a new project, which is the Beach to Beach Hill pathway. They're gonna go out and solicit some donations to help with the work with that Ron Howard is doing.
No way. What beach are they starting at?
Well, the idea is basically from Goodies Beach to where the pathway already existed. The new pathway is gonna be on the Erickson farmland. It goes up to Beach Hill Road. So the idea being that once that's completed, then you would be able to be on a pathway all the way from the beach to the top of Beach Hill.
That'll be cool.
And
And
actually,
then you could go all the way to
all the
Route
way
90.
to Rockville and down
Right.
Route 17. So at any rate, that's what they're gonna do. They are on a regular meeting schedule now, meeting every month, second Thursday of the month in the afternoon. I will miss next month's too because I won't be here, but they seem to be reinvigorated and getting back to work again, which is good. Cemetery, we gotta get together on that. We haven't done that yet. We need a meeting. And I think that's it. I'm the temporary liaison to the Conservation Commission, but I haven't been to a meeting, as they so quickly pointed out tonight. But I don't know whether they meet again before the
I
election.
feel
or
like
not.
I'm the liaison to the Conservation Commission because of my wife.
Would
by
you
virtue
put
of
on here
proximity?
where you,
I
when
hear
you're
more
out of
about
town?
it than anything else.
Because you go to, you're not over town meeting this year, so.
Geoff?
Geoff, yes, temporary liaison to the Harbor Committee.
Early.
And they talked, and Jamie, were you there? Because I did not bring my notes. You weren't not
You
at the
know
Harbor
any other
Committee.
dates you're gonna miss?
No.
No, I don't think.
So in any event, Inner Harbor is basically conversations that have been going on for 2 years, which is launching of a new oversized for Inner Harbor lobster boat. Fisherman wants to be in the Inner Harbor with a 50-foot boat. It maxes 40. By virtue of pi r squared, a swing ratio takes up that much more effort. So a lot of talking about whether the Harbor Committee would support a change in the ordinance, which they did not want to support. More things about dinghies, dock designs,
Oh, okay. never mind.
and Mike was there talking about what was gonna happen in the next couple of
They gotta be
weeks.
changed.
Oh,
Okay, I didn't see it signed.
and another citizen from Rockport who has a wide boat, a trimaran, wanted
Oh.
to have more of a, was that to me?
No, it was passing it to him. I
Uh,
think I know who you're talking about.
I'll just go on and say a bunch of random words and then. So anyway, a trimaran owner wanted to be able to utilize the cheap boat storage for longer into the season, and that came to a compromise. And that was about it.
If he had it his way, he'd have it in the water for like 2 weeks in the middle of July.
No. He wants it in the water. It's just a matter of getting to it. It's just boats
What's
are like
the
that.
difference distance-wise between the current mooring for the 40-foot boat in the inner harbor versus where it would be in the outer harbor on the close end for a 50-footer? Is that a compromise to get him as close?
That's yeah. Abby,
Still in the
Abby's
outer
working,
harbor, but you're the first mooring there.
Abby is working hugely there is a tuna fisherman's mooring that is vacant that she can move him on to. It's a
Passes
clash
down
of
him,
the
too.
of the
That slows down to Rick, but yeah.
it's a clash of personalities, egos, and everything. So no, it's not very far at all. And it's just perceptions and a lot of other things.
Rick, those that I just handed down to you, they're either for your signature or they're the policies, the adoption of the mission statement.
Yes.
That we changed a word on.
Right, so we'll have to redo
And
them.
the emergency action
Yep.
operations plan policy, which we tabled.
So we'll have to change the ones that you messed with.
Yep. And last thing I wanted to remind everybody is we do have that executive session on June 1st, 4 PM. We're gonna have to have a short meeting beforehand to approve a couple of sets of minutes, and there's one other thing that's going on at that point, but for that one as well. But, it's just gonna be a very brief meeting, and then we're gonna go in executive session.
Oh, wow. So we would have minutes of this action today on June 1st, potentially?
We will have.
Okay.
Given our
Do we have
our
anything
highly
else?
irregular vote.
Does anybody have anything else?
Can I make a motion?
No, you can't. You're not a voter.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? We are adjourned.